Chapter 451. Although Asgard was a universal civilization with a long history, Asgard's war culture was not much different from medieval Europe. To put it simply, both sides of the war would gather their respective armies, then choose a battlefield where no one had any objections, set up a formation and finally charge directly. Yes, Asgard's war culture was so simple, just like a street gang fight. The only difference was that the number of people fighting was a little more, the weapons were more powerful, and the individual combat power was a little stronger. When Fenrir refused Hela's summon, Thor, who was riding on the eight-legged Thor's hammer, directly raised the hammer of Thor in his right hand and summoned a huge lightning bolt that cut through the cold wind. Accompanied by the rumbling sound of thunder, Thor waved Thor's hammer and soared into the sky, flying straight toward Hela, who was on the frost behemoth. Without any orders, when Thor took the lead and flew toward the goddess of death, Asgard's army also rushed toward the frost giant army and the undead army on the opposite side like a torrent. Stupid. Looking at Thor, who was flying toward her like lightning, goddess of death Hela snorted disdainfully. Then she slowly raised her right hand and gently waved it from left to right. The moment Hela waved her hand, black swords appeared out of thin air and flew toward Thor and the Asgard army behind him like a rainstorm. However, just as these black swords flew out, a Rasengan wrapped in lightning took the lead and flew into the frost giant's army. Raiton, spiral electromagnetic gun. Rog, who was riding on Fenrir's back, did not charge with Thor but directly used ninjutsu. Since Thor didn't want Asgard to be known as bloody and cruel, then this bad name will be carried by me. Unlike Thor, Rog didn't care what others would think of him. Even on Earth, he dared to let Konoha maintain a strong and domineering style, and he didn't care what others would say about him and Konoha. Not to mention that he was now in an alien kingdom like Jotunheim, facing an alien race like the Frost Giants. Although the spiral electromagnetic cannon was not big, its speed and power were not small at all. Before the black sword that Hela shot out could reach Thor, the light blue spiral railgun had already landed in the middle of the Frost Giant army. Boom. A terrifying explosion that caused the earth to tremble resounded. A huge light blue ball of light soared into the sky, and a powerful energy storm and shockwave swept out in all directions like a hurricane, instantly engulfing everything. The terrifying shockwave produced by the explosion blew away the raging cold wind, causing the harsh cold weather to temporarily disappear. No one thought that Rog's first shot would be a large-scale attack ninjutsu. However, what surprised them even more was what he did next. Before the explosion of the first spiral electromagnetic gun had dissipated, he threw out the second spiral electromagnetic gun. Then the third, fourth, fifth and sixth shots followed. Rog used the electromagnetic pulse gun 6 times before he ended the saturation attack. That's all I can do for you. Although Thor decided to follow the tradition of Asgard and use Asgard's army to face the Frost Giants and the undead army head-on. However, Rog was not willing to see these ordinary soldiers die in vain. The place where they were now was called Jotunheim, the place with the most Frost Giants in the universe. Coupled with the racial characteristics of the Frost Giants, the number of enemies facing Asgard's army was several times their own. For this decisive battle, Thor basically pulled out all of Asgard's main forces. But even so, Asgard's soldiers were less than 100,000. Opposite them were hundreds of thousands of Frost Giants and an even more astonishing undead army. He respected the tradition of Asgard, but he also hoped that more ordinary soldiers could return to Asgard alive. After all, during this time, Asgard had provided him with a meticulous feudal life. If you respect me, I will return the favor tenfold. The 6 spiral electromagnetic cannons were his return to this feudal and depraved life. The 6 powerful electromagnetic pulse gunshots not only disrupted the formation of the Frost Giants and the undead army, but also significantly reduced their advantage in numbers. As for the rest, of course, it was up to Asgard's soldiers to deal with. Moreover, when Asgard's soldiers and the Frost Giants fought, Rog could not continue to use these saturation attacks. Unless he wanted to take Asgard's ordinary soldiers with him. The goddess of death originally thought that she only needed to get rid of her brother Thor this time. However, it turned out that her thinking was a little too simple. If she wanted to return to Asgard's throne, defeating Thor was far from enough. At least in Hela's opinion, this guy called Rog was more troublesome than Thor. When subduing the Frost Giants, she did not forget to inquire about Asgard. She knew what Rog had done in Asgard in recent years, but what she did not expect was that Rog was stronger than the rumors said. Looking at the Frost Giants and the undead army scattered around, Hela put away her initial disdain and stroked her black hair with both hands. With a stroke of her hands, her long black hair disappeared. What replaced it was a black helmet with 10 sharp horns of different lengths. The goddess of death, Hela, had officially entered battle mode. As soon as Hela's black helmet appeared, Thor, who was holding 2 hammers, one big and one small, appeared in front of her. Then he held the Thunder Titan's hammer in his left hand and smashed it at Hela. Thor did not leave and use Thor's hammer to attack Hela. This was because he knew that as the previous owner of Thor's hammer, Hela definitely had the ability to block Thor's hammer's attack. Facing Thor's Thunder Titan's hammer, Hela, who was sitting on the frost behemoth, did not dodge. She casually stretched out her right hand. The huge Thunder Titan's hammer fell with the power of thunder and smashed into Hela's right hand. Then nothing happened. Thor's Thunder Titan's hammer was like a floating balloon, easily blocked by Hela and did not cause any damage to her. Not only that, when Thor tried to pull back the Thunder Titan's hammer, he suddenly realized that he could not. With Thor's hammer as a sample, the Thunder Titan's hammer, which Tani had painstakingly created, seemed to be nailed to Hela's hand. No matter how hard Thor tried, the Thunder Titan's hammer did not move at all. Thor had seen this scene before when others tried to lift Thor's hammer. Kneel. Hela, who was holding the Thunder Titan's hammer, looked at Thor calmly and said like a queen. Chapter 452. When Hela said kneel, with an expressionless face, Thor felt as if he was looking at a female version of Loki. Just as arrogant, just as insufferably arrogant. As the Thor of Asgard and the regent, of course Thor would not choose to kneel. He raised Thor's hammer and summoned a huge bolt of lightning as thick as a bucket from the cloudy sky toward Hela. The bolt of lightning from the sky arrived before Hela at an unimaginable speed and accurately hit her body. Boom. The sound of a huge explosion rang out, and tiny electric snakes scattered like fireworks. He had succeeded. Saul's heart surged with joy. However, in the next second, the joy in his heart disappeared. What replaced it was shock and disbelief. The messy electric snakes quickly dissipated in the air, and Hela's figure appeared before him once again. Unharmed. Not only was Hela not injured as Thor had imagined, but even the frost behemoth under her was also unharmed. How is this possible? Although it was a last-minute move, Thor was very clear about the power of the lightning he summoned. Has Odin gone senile? To actually choose a weakling like you to inherit the throne. With Hela's strength, she could have dodged the lightning before it hit her. However, she did not do so because she wanted to see what kind of strength the air that Odin had carefully cultivated had. She was very disappointed. Very disappointed. With the strength that Thor had shown so far, he was far from being able to compete with her before she was imprisoned, let alone the current her. Thinking of this, Hela's disdain for Thor became even more obvious. She had originally thought that the heir that Odin had carefully cultivated would be a top expert that could look down on the 9 worlds, but reality proved that she had thought too much. After personally experiencing Thor's attack, Hela did not intend to continue playing with Thor. She grabbed the Thunder Titan's hammer with her right hand and exerted force. Bang! The Thunder Titan's hammer, which was made of URU metal and other metals from the Divine Palace, shattered under Hela's grab, turning into pieces of scrap metal of different sizes. Shattering a hammer with her bare hands. Although Hela did not crush Thor's hammer this time but the Thunder Titan's hammer that Tani had created, the scene was still shocking. The most shocked one was Tani, who had personally created the Thunder Titan's hammer. He knew that Hela was very strong, or they would not have brought tens of thousands of troops here. However, he did not expect Hela was to be this strong. If even the Thunder Titan's hammer could not withstand a casual grab from Hela, then Mark 46 would definitely not be able to. It took less than a second for Tony to make the decision to stay away from hell. Saul's entire family was a monster. Of course, monsters could only be dealt with. Tani began to look for traces of the other monster, Rog. After using 6 spiral electromagnetic cannons, Rog used superlight rock to leave Fenrir's back, allowing Fenrir to freely attack the frost giants and the undead army. As for himself, he was floating above the battlefield, looking down at the battle between Thor and Hela. Hela was very strong, undeniably strong. Especially after witnessing Hela block the lightning with the divine power of death, he was even more certain. It was not difficult to use the divine power of death to protect oneself from lightning. As long as one was slightly proficient in energy control, they could do this. However, what Hela did was far more than that. Not only did Hela use the divine power of death to protect herself, but she also protected the frost giant under her and the surrounding ground. What was even rarer was that Hela controlled the output of the divine power of death to an extremely precise degree, making the divine power of death just enough to offset the power of the lightning, creating a scene as if nothing had happened. If one were to describe it in terms of figure, then one would be fat if one were to add a bit more, and one would be thin if one were to add a bit less. Perfect. Perfect in the truest sense. Although Rog's control of chakra could be considered exquisite, compared to Gila's control of the divine power of death, he was not just a little bit behind. As expected of the goddess of death who had once made Odin feel troubled. Just as Rog was admiring Gila's exquisite control, a black sword suddenly appeared in Gila's left hand, directly piercing toward Thor, who was still in a state of shock. Clang. The black sword that Gila casually summoned hit the anti-Hela armor on Thor's body, creating a crisp sound of collision. Different from the Thunder Titan's hammer, the anti-Hela armor did not disgrace Tani's reputation as a genius inventor, easily blocking Gila's sword. It was only when the tip of the black sword hit the anti-Hela armor on his body that Thor finally reacted, quickly waving Thor's hammer, increasing the distance between him and Gila. The image of Gila blocking the lightning without any injury and crushing the Thunder Titan with her bare hands brought immense pressure to Thor. At the same time, it also made him feel a little fortunate. Fortunately, it was the Thunder Titan's hammer that had smashed toward Gila in the beginning and not Thor's hammer, or he would have lost more than just a weapon. After Thor increased the distance between him and Gila, Rog, who was floating in the air, quickly flew to Thor's side. Your mind is a little unstable right now. Let me deal with her first, you go deal with the other enemies. If anyone else had said this to him at this time, Thor would definitely have rejected without even thinking. However, the person who said this to him was Rog. Be careful. She's very strong, much stronger than we thought. After giving Rog a reminder, Thor waved Thor's hammer and flew toward the area with the most frost giants. After Thor left, Rog took a deep breath and calmed his mind completely. 3 Tomo Sharingan open. With the opening of the Sharingan, his aura also changed, becoming as sharp as the cold wind around him. Lightning body blink. Rog, who was glowing with a light blue light, instantly disappeared. Lightning body blink had already become a habit for him. No matter what kind of enemy he was facing, using lightning body blink to launch a surprise attack or test the waters was a good method. In just an instant, Rog appeared in front of Gila as if he had teleported. He jumped high into the air and slashed at Gila's neck with his Kusanagi sword. Clang. Gila, who was sitting on the frost behemoth, did not change her expression. She casually raised the black sword in her left hand and blocked the incoming Kusanagi sword. At the same time, she summoned a black sword with her empty right hand and stabbed it at Log, who was in midair. The black sword in Gila's right hand instantly pierced through Rog's body. Blue blood spurted out, and a 2-meter-tall frost giant painfully gripped the black sword that had pierced through his body. Substitution technique. Chapter 453. Rog had not used the substitution jutsu in a battle for a long time. As he mastered more and more ninjutsu, there were fewer and fewer battles where he needed to use the substitution jutsu. Even so, when he used this ninjutsu that he had not used for a long time, he did not feel unfamiliar with it. When the black sword in Gila's right hand stabbed towards him, he randomly picked a target from the frost giants around him and let this unlucky guy take the hit for him. In Naruto's world, the substitution jutsu was one of the 3 entry-level ninjutsu. Those who did not learn the substitution jutsu were not even qualified to graduate from the ninja academy. However, in this world, the substitution jutsu was definitely a godly technique for dodging attacks. Even if there was a limit to its range, it did not affect this point at all. Compared to when he first learned the substitution jutsu, Rog's range was now several times larger, enough to allow him to dodge most attacks except for large-scale ones. For example, at a time like this. When she blocked Rog's Kusanagi sword, Gila did not feel that there was anything praiseworthy about his attack this time. However, when Rog used the substitution jutsu that she had never seen before and could not even see through, Gila's expression appeared as if she had seen a new prey. In an instant, he replaced her position with the frost giants and let them take the hit that should have been taken by her. Interesting. Gila did not pay attention to the frost giants that were still struggling in pain. She released her right hand and directly abandoned the black sword. For Gila, this black sword was a consumable that she did not need to care about at all. However, when she released her right hand and threw away the black sword, Rog, who had disappeared, once again appeared in her sight. She saw him stepping on the frost giant's head, and when the frost giant fell due to gravity, he swung the Kusanagi sword that was wrapped in lightning. Lightning release, Chidori blade. After testing it out, he roughly understood the strength of the black sword. Since the Kusanagi sword under normal conditions could not cut through it, then he would try the more lethal and sharper Kusanagi sword, Chidori blade. While Gila had plenty of combat experience and exquisite techniques, She had never met an opponent like Rog who did not play by the rules. Normal people would choose to pull away after their first attack failed and redeploy a second attack. However, Rog did not do so. Although he had used the substitution technique and let the unlucky frost giant take the blow for him, the frost giant's body was still very weak. However, he did not distance himself from them. Instead, he hid in the blind spot created by the frost giant and the frost behemoth. Because of the angle, Gila, who was sitting on the frost behemoth, did not notice his little action immediately. Instead, she thought that he had chosen to distance himself from her like everyone else. When Gila let go of her right hand and tried to find him, he instantly appeared above the falling frost giant from her blind spot. When she saw Rog stepping on the frost giant's head, Gila's right hand once again summoned the black sword, and the black sword in her left hand immediately attacked him. However, to Rog, Gila's movements were too slow. In this kind of high-speed close-range combat, even a delay of 0.01 seconds would cause irreparable consequences. The Kusanagi sword in Rog's hand drew a beautiful arc, and under Gila's gaze, he instantly appeared in front of her. The Kusanagi sword with lightning wrapped around it slashed through Gila, cutting off one of the sharp horns on her helmet. It was not that Rog did not want to directly cut off Gila's head, but he did not have such a chance. While the black swords in Gila's hands could not stop him in time, her strangely shaped black helmet with 10 sharp horns managed to block his unexpected attack. At the start, Rog was still curious as to why the goddess of death would choose such a strange helmet. Now he knew. This black helmet was not only a decoration that made Gila look more domineering, but it was also a protective equipment with good defensive effects. At the very least, when Gila was wearing this helmet, Rog would definitely not choose to attack her head with his bare hands. Lightning blink. While the final result was a little different from what he had imagined, he did not hesitate and directly used lightning blink to leave the frost giant's head. When the frost giant with the black sword in its chest fell heavily in front of the frost behemoth, the black horn that was cut off by the Kusanagi sword, Thousand Birds blade fell onto the frost behemoth's body, then bounced up slightly and fell onto the thick frozen ground. You're good, at least much better than Thor. Looking at the black horn that had fallen to the ground, Gila's expression did not change as she spoke to Rog, who was dozens of meters away. Then, under Rog's gaze, Gila raised her right hand and gently touched the horn that had been cut off by Rog. When Gila's right hand touched the smooth surface of the cut, a ghostly green light lit up, and the black horn that had been cut off quickly returned to its original state. At the same time, the black horn on the ground turned into a bundle of black hair. It's actually hair. Seeing this scene, Rog revealed a look of doubt. All this time he had thought that Gila was wearing a strange helmet. However, now it seemed that it was not a helmet at all but hair that had been changed by the god of death. This way of using energy was very imaginative. Using energy to strengthen parts of the body was a relatively common and orthodox method. For example, Rog often used chakra to strengthen his body, giving him more strength and speed in battle. However, Gila's method was completely different. She used the god of death's power on her hair, turning it into a strange helmet. When the helmet that had turned into hair returned to its original state, Gila, who was holding two swords, jumped down from the frost behemoth and slowly walked toward Rog. When she was only 20 meters away from Rog, she stopped and said to Rog with the arrogance of a queen, "Submit and be loyal to me, and I will give you the position of Asgard's executioner." Although Gila's tone made people feel very unhappy, and her arrogant attitude was even more annoying than Loki before he was beaten up, for some reason when these words came out of Gila's mouth, it made people feel as if it was natural. "Sorry, I have no intention of becoming someone else's subordinate." Rog did not hesitate and directly rejected Gila's suggestion. Then she continued, "Also, you do not have the authority to appoint Asgard's executioner. Appointing an executioner was a power that only the king of Asgard had." Putting aside the fact that Gila did not have such authority, even the current soul did not have it. Chapter 454. After being rejected by Rog, Gila did not say anything else and only looked at him coldly. Then she threw the black sword in her hand directly at Rog. Clang, clang. Gila's throwing attack was no threat to Rog, who had activated his 3-tomo Sharingan. He casually raised the Kusanagi sword in his hand and deflected the two black swords that were flying at him like bullets. "Throwing attacks in front of me who has activated his Sharingan. Aren't you looking down on me a little too much?" Just as Rog looked at Gila with dissatisfaction, Gila suddenly disappeared from his sight. In just an instant, Gila had crossed the distance of 20 meters and was directly in front of him. So fast. Gila's sudden burst of speed gave Rog a slight shock. The speed that Hela displayed at this moment was not any slower than Rog, who had used lightning body blink. Before he had time to marvel at Hela's speed, Hela's hands once again summoned the black swords. Rog did not know if these black swords that Hela summoned were the so-called swords of the night sky, but he was certain that the quality of these black swords was not low at all. From a certain perspective, they could even be called high-quality weapons. The weapons that Asgard's Golden Palace guards carried with them were clearly inferior to these black swords. Clang clang clang. After summoning the black swords with both hands again, Hela did not hesitate and launched a barrage of attacks at Rog. Hela's swordsmanship was very good. It was sharp, deadly, and extremely fast. If Hela's opponent was not Rog, who was using the Kusanagi sword, but Thor, who was using Thor's hammer. With just this superb swordsmanship, Hela could easily control the rhythm of the battle in her hands. However, it was a pity that she was facing Rog, who was also skilled in swordsmanship. In terms of swordsmanship, he had never been afraid of anyone. Hela, who held the sword with both hands, attacked like a machine that would not tire, and the sharp blade continuously attacked Rog's vital parts. Heart, throat, head, even Log's lower body was one of Hela's targets. Log did not dare to be careless in the face of Hela's attacks, which could severely injure him even if he did not die. He had no intention of dying in Jotunheim, nor of risking the happiness of the rest of his life. With his 3 Tomo Sharingan, he was able to block all of Hela's attacks with his Kusanagi sword. At this time, although Hela and Rog did not use any powerful attacks, the surrounding frost giants and Asgard's warriors all silently distanced themselves from the two of them. It wasn't that they didn't want to help, but they couldn't help at all. While Hela and Rog were only competing in swordsmanship, their competition had already exceeded the scope of what ordinary people could understand. Simply put, it could be described with one word: fast. It was faster than the limit of what the naked eye could capture. In the eyes of others, Rog and Hela seemed to be shrouded in endless black and white sword shadows. Not only could they not see the black sword and the Kusanagi sword, but even the figures of Rog and Hela were blurry. On the other side of the battlefield, when Tani saw Rog and Hela competing in swordsmanship, he tried to ask Friday on Mark 46 to analyze their fighting style. However, within a few seconds, Friday gave a reply that exceeded the system's capture and analysis. Monsters. They're all monsters. Although Tani knew that Rog was a monster, every battle with Rog would refresh his understanding of monsters. In addition to Tani, Hulk, who was beating up the frost giants, also had the intention of helping Rog. However, after seeing their dazzling attacks, Hulk wisely gave up the idea. Although Hulk was not as smart as Dr. Banner, his combat IQ was much higher than Dr. Banner's. With just a casual glance, Hulk knew that he could not keep up with the rhythm and speed of Rog and Hela's battle, let alone intervene. While the people around them were shocked by their rapid attack and defense, Rog became calmer and calmer. In the past few years he had fought many opponents. However, he had never met an enemy like Hela. Hela's melee fighting style was extremely similar to his, and it could even be said that they came from the same philosophy. That was, in the world of martial arts, there was nothing that could not be defeated, only speed could not be defeated. Both of them were the kind of people who gave up on fancy moves and focused on speed. Faster attack speed, faster attack speed, faster reaction speed. Although this method of attack seemed simple and crude, in a real battle, it could play an unbelievable effect. As time passed by, Hela and Rog's rapid attack and defense did not show any signs of slowing down. Instead, it began to develop in an even more extreme direction. They both knew very well that once one of them could not hold on, it would be a one-sided crushing situation. If they were slower by one sword, they would completely lose the initiative. Because he was holding the sword with one hand, Rog began to slowly fall into a situation where he was more defensive than offensive. The attack frequency of the one-sword style was naturally slower than that of the two-sword style. Damn it. As Hela's attacks became more and more intense, Rog finally took out the flying Thor kunai from his ninja bag and held it in his left hand. He originally thought that his one-sword style would be enough to resist Hela's two-sword style attack. However, it turned out that he had overestimated himself and underestimated Hela. When the flying Thor kunai also joined the battle, the tilted balance became balanced again, and Rog and Hela fell into a situation where neither could do anything to the other. Double sword style Rog versus double sword style Hela. Chapter 455. Whether it was using his mouth to bite the kunai or fighting with 3 weapons at the same time, none of them were Rog's original ideas. However, this did not stop him from using these techniques in battle. When it came to imitating physical techniques, The Sharingan could be said to be omnipotent. Taking advantage of the moment when Gila stopped attacking, Rog, who had returned from the Flying Thunder God, quickly entered a berserk state. Previously, Gila had initiated the attack, so she had a certain advantage. Now this advantage was in Rog's hands. In his right hand was the Kusanagi sword, in his left hand was the Flying Thor Kunai, and in his mouth was a Flying Thor Kunai. This was Rog's three-sword style. He did not hesitate at all when he reappeared and immediately attacked Gila. Clang 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 clang. The sound of weapons clashing rang out like a Gatling gun, playing the prelude to Rog's battle. In terms of swordsmanship, Gila was definitely the strongest among Asgard's people. Even Fandral, who was also famous for his swordsmanship among the three warriors of Sengoku, was far inferior to Gila in this aspect. However, now Rog had shown Gila what a swordsman from Earth was like. Gila, who was originally on par with Rog in swordsmanship, was quickly forced into a defensive situation when Rog suddenly used the three-sword style that no one had ever used before. The Flying Thor Kunai was far shorter than the Black Sword and the Kusanagi sword. However, under Rog's ingenious attacks, the Flying Thor Kunai was useless. This proved what it meant to be an inch shorter, an inch more dangerous. Gila did not expect that Rog would use the factor of disappearing as a factor to win the battle. When the enemy disappeared, anyone would stop immediately. No one liked to fight with the air. This was especially true for those who were good at close combat and could control their own attacks at will. However, Rog used this combat mentality to negate Gila's advantage and completed the transition from two-sword style to three-sword style. This was a beautiful move. Even though they were enemies, Gila still felt that Rog had played this move beautifully and could not help but praise him in her heart. If it weren't for the fact that they were on different sides, this guy named Rog would be a good opponent to spar with. After confirming that she could no longer turn the situation around, Gila's thoughts became more and more scattered. Even though she was unwilling, she had to admit that she had lost in this battle of swordsmanship. Although her defense was still impenetrable, she could clearly feel that she was losing the rhythm of the battle. At this rate, it wouldn't be long before Rog would be able to completely break through her defense and cut her with his Kusanagi sword and Flying Thor Kunai. She was not someone who could not afford to lose. After confirming that she had no chance of winning, she decisively mobilized the divine power of death in her body. The moment she activated her divine power, Rog, who was in the midst of his frenzied attacks, immediately sensed that something was wrong. Lightning body flicker. Without any hesitation, he decisively used a ninjutsu, and his entire body disappeared in an instant. The moment he left his original spot, black blades that were several meters long surged out from the ground like the spikes of a hedgehog, covering an area of more than 10 meters. *CK. Gila, you don't have any morals. Seeing this, Rog cursed in his heart. Even when the first and second sword style was more defensive than offensive, he did not choose to use fire extinguisher or water wave breaker on Gila. That was because he did not want to destroy the purity of this swordsmanship competition. However, he did not expect that just as he saw the hope of winning with his three-sword style, Gila would start to disregard her morals and use an area of effect attack. If not for the fact that he was more sensitive to the flow of energy, he might have already become a human skewer on those black blades. We agreed to have a pleasant swordsmanship competition, but you secretly used an area of effect attack. Even though he cursed in his heart, Rog did not take this matter to heart. After all, he and Gila were fighting with their lives on the line, and this was not a friendly exchange between swordsmanship enthusiasts. Would release, Descent of the Tree World. When Gila took the initiative to use an area of effect attack, Rog did not hold back and directly used a super large area of effect ninjutsu that could change the terrain. On the barren frozen plains, huge trees grew rapidly, adding a touch of green to this monotonous ice field. If it was just to attack Gila, Rog did not need to use such a large area of effect ninjutsu. In addition to attacking Gila, Descent of the Tree World had other uses. It increased the home field advantage, and to guard against Gila's Heavenly Maiden scattering flowers. Until now, Rog still had not figured out how Gila was able to summon weapons out of thin air without any restrictions. However, he did not want to have to pay attention to the rain of swords that Gila casually threw out in the following battle. The dense forest formed by Descent of the Tree World covered most of the plains. In this dense forest, the rain of swords thrown by Gila would be blocked to the greatest extent. Unless Gila was like Rog, throwing out the incomprehensible Uchiha Jutsu. The moment Descent of the Tree World took shape, Gila saw through Rog's intentions. This also caused her to have a doubt. For some reason, she felt that Rog seemed to be very clear about her fighting style and what kind of ability she had, as if he was an opponent who had fought with her before. However, Hela was very sure that today was the first time she had met Rog. Did he see the battle footage I saved in Asgard? Other than that, Hela did not understand how Rog could be so clear about her fighting style and be able to make arrangements to counter it. On this point, Hela was completely wrong. Not to mention her battle footage, even her name was considered a top secret in Asgard. If not for Odin's impending death, news about her would not have appeared in Asgard at all. The fact that Rog knew her fighting style was purely due to his prophetic aura as a transmigrator. Just as Hela was thinking about how Rog knew about her fighting style, Rog put away the flying Thor kunai and Kusanagi sword and summoned 4 wood clones. These 4 wood clones were not used to attack Hela but to create an undisturbed battlefield. Without any arrangements, these 4 shadow clones rushed to the north, south, east, and west respectively. Then they used the same ninjutsu. 4 purple flame formation. A rectangular purple barrier rose into the sky, creating a small battlefield separated from the main battlefield. Although Arhat's build was simple and honest, its attack speed was not slow at all. In the blink of an eye, its huge right fist was right in front of her. Boom! A huge impact sounded, and with Hela as the center, spiderweb-like cracks appeared on the ground dozens of meters around her. Arhat's punch could not be said to be weak. However, this titan-like punch did not land on Hela's body as expected. 5 or 6 sharp black blades suddenly surged out from the ground and pressed against the wooden Arhat's right fist like spears, piercing deeply into his fist. Before Rog could control Arhat to retract his right fist, Hela waved her right hand, and 3 black swords 6 to 7 meters long appeared out of thin air, attacking him like ground-to-air missiles. With the flying speed of the black swords, it would take less than 1 or 2 seconds to reach Rog. At this time, the long-nosed wood dragon jumped up from the ground like a viper hunting its prey and directly bit the 3 black swords, neutralizing Hela's attack. Taking advantage of the time when the long-nosed wood dragon bit the black swords, Rog had Arhat retract his right fist. Then he punched with both fists. Yula 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 yula. Since one fist was not enough, he would add one more. The praised Namo Gatling Bodhisattva fist technique, which had once destroyed the immortal Palace Guardian Destroyer and Mephisto's demon puppet, was performed once again. 3,600 revolutions per breath. Save the world with great compassion and compassion. Although Rog had used the 4 purple flame formation to isolate himself and Hela from the main battlefield, the terrifying momentum caused by Arhat's Gatling fist still shocked both sides. Looking at wood Arhat's fists that were about to turn into afterimages, the frost giant who witnessed this scene couldn't help but feel a chill. The frost giants had an extremely high resistance to cold, but for some reason when they saw the wooden Arhat who looked like an ancient titan frantically throwing punches, they felt a chill that originated from their biological instincts. From the start, the frost giant had not taken the initiative to stand on Hela's side. Although they hated Asgard, they also knew that Asgard was not an existence they could easily provoke. Even when the previous frost giant King Laufey was still in power, they could only do some sneaky tricks. Not to mention that they hadn't even chosen a new frost giant king yet. If Hela hadn't forced them to join this war with unrivaled strength, they wouldn't have appeared here at all. After seeing Wood Arhat's frightening and violent attacks, they felt more and more that they shouldn't have joined this war. This was the family affair of Asgard's royal family, and it had nothing to do with them, the frost giants. The last time they intervened in Odin's family affairs, their king died, and the whole family was almost wiped out by Bifrost. After such a painful experience, they had planned to live a peaceful life in Jotunheim. They didn't expect that Hela, the goddess of death, would come. They were now beginning to wonder if any family disputes would happen in Odin's family, and they, the frost giants, would die with them. Although they were very reluctant, they knew one thing very well, and that was, before Hela completely failed, they had better not choose to give up easily. Otherwise their ending might be even worse than the last time. From the looks of it, Rog now had the upper hand. However, he was the only one who knew the real situation. Although Wood Arhat was doing well now, he still couldn't break through Hela's defense. It was as if Hela's black blades were free of charge. After one was broken, a few more would appear. It was as if there was no end to them. What was even more troublesome was that behind these black blades, there was an energy barrier built by the divine power of death. Chapter 457. Compared to Thor, who could only summon lightning to attack, Hela's use of divine power was clearly several levels higher. Strengthening the body, creating weapons out of thin air, awakening the dead, energy barrier, This was only the ability that Hela had displayed so far. As for whether she had any other hidden methods, only she knew. When Wood Arhat broke the black longsword that Hela summoned again, Rog stopped this seemingly powerful praise of Namo Gatling Bodhisattva fist technique that did not hurt Hela at all. Without his control, the huge Wood Arhat quickly returned to the form that Wood should have, turning into a huge wooden sculpture that was dozens of meters tall. The moment Wood Arhat stopped moving, 4 or 5 black blades that were dozens of meters long shot out from the ground where Hela was, piercing through the motionless Wood Arhat. Rog did not care that Wood Arhat was pierced. When the black blades shot out of the ground, he flashed from the top of Wood Arhat's head to the head of the long hook-nosed wood dragon. At the same time, he controlled the wood dragon to fly directly toward Hela on the ground. Although the wood dragon's size was not as shocking as Wood Arhat's, the slimmer long hook-nosed wood dragon had a speed that far exceeded Wood Arhat's. Almost at the same time that Wood Arhat was pierced, the wood dragon had already arrived in front of Hela. Looking at the wood dragon and Rog that were only 10 meters away from her, Hela's expression did not change at all. She waved her right hand gently from left to right. The moment Hela waved her hand, dozens of black swords of different sizes quickly appeared in the originally empty air. These black swords were like bullets, shooting towards the wood dragon and Log at lightning speed. Although the wood dragon was larger and easier to hit, Hela's attack was not limited to Hela. Under Hela's invisible control, most of these black swords attacked Rog, who was standing on the wood dragon's head. To catch bandits, first catch the king. As a commander who had led Asgard's army to conquer the 9 worlds, Hela was not unaware of this. In the blink of an eye, these dozens of black swords from different directions arrived in front of Rog. Then they completely pierced through his body. No. This is not Rog's original body. As soon as the black swords hit Rog, Hela felt that something was wrong. Although she did not understand Rog's fighting style, she knew one thing. That was that Rog, who had almost defeated her in swordsmanship, would definitely not be so easy to hit. Just as Hela expected, the moment the black sword pierced through Rog's body, Rog, who looked no different from a real person, suddenly turned into a 3-legged giant black crow with 3 black magatama in its red eyes. It screeched and flew in all directions. Sharingan reality illusion. 8 crow clone. Normal illusions would not work on her at all. Even the more powerful Sharingan illusions had a high risk of failure. Unless you use Manjikyu Sharingan to cast Genjutsu, or break the boundary between reality and illusion, and use Genjutsu that is similar to reality. Sharingan reality illusion. This was not a part of the Sharingan illusion system, but a brand new illusion that combined the Sharingan illusion and the reality gem. Using the reality gem, Rog turned the illusory Sharingan illusion into something real, creating this strange and realistic scene. Dozens of 3-legged Yagata crows screeched as they flew in all directions, circling around Hela like hawks trying to catch their prey. At the same time, the wood dragon that had been hit in the eyes and face by the black swords crossed the last 10 meters, opened its huge mouth full of sharp teeth, and swallowed Hela on the ground. Hela did not care about the attack of the wood dragon. With her speed, if she wanted to avoid the long hook-nosed wooden dragon's beast-like attack, she could leave before the wooden dragon opened its mouth. However, she did not do so. With the energy barrier built by the divine power of death, not to mention that the wood dragon was just a wooden creature. Even if the long hook-nosed wood dragon was a real dragon, she wouldn't take it to heart. At this time, she was more concerned about Rog, who had just turned into 8 crows. Although Hela was not a mage, she was no stranger to illusions. To some extent, she could even be regarded as proficient in Asgard magic. It was precisely because of this that she was so concerned about the Sharingan reality illusion that Rog had just cast. The reason why illusions were called illusions was because it was an illusory existence. And the reality illusion that Rog had just cast clearly broke the most basic essence of illusions. End this quickly. Use the fastest speed to defeat this strange earthling. Then find out what method he used to break the boundary between reality and illusion. As the princess of Asgard and the goddess of death, there were not many things that could interest Hela. For example, the throne of Asgard or the reality illusion that Rog had just cast. Of course, what Hela wanted was not Rog's method of turning into 8 crows. What she was interested in was what was behind this illusion. What she wanted was Rog's method of breaking the boundary between reality and illusion. As long as she mastered the mystery, she could make the underworld that she longed for appear in this world. Thinking of this, Hela did not hesitate. The energy barrier protecting her instantly turned into a terrifying energy impact. Boom. The wood dragon's huge head instantly exploded. Hela, who was wrapped in the dark green divine power of death, slowly landed on the ground, her eyes constantly sweeping across the 8 crows flying in the air. Although Hila did not know how Rog did it, she knew that Rog's real body was one of the 8 crows. Finding Rog's real body among dozens of identical 8 crows might be a very difficult task for others. However, 2 to 3 seconds was enough for the goddess of death, Hila. Although these 8 crows flying and screaming in the sky looked exactly the same, Hila soon discovered the difference. Most of the 8-foot crows had 3 black tomo in their eyes. In the eyes of one of them, there was a triangular dart-shaped pattern. Found you. Gathering the divine power of death in her legs, Hila gently leaped and arrived in front of this 8-foot crow with completely different eye patterns. Just as she was about to slash the black sword in her hand at this different 8-foot crow, this 8-foot crow suddenly spoke. "I've been waiting for you for a long time." This was Rog's voice. Hila instinctively sensed that something was wrong, but it was too late. Before Hila could react, the flying 8-foot crow spoke again. "Welcome to my Tsukuyumi world." Chapter 458. A huge crimson moon hung in the deep night sky. Other than the occasional crow screams in the distance, this place was as quiet as a dead world without any life. Hila immediately realized the abnormality of this world. However, just as she was about to mobilize the divine power of death in her body, she was shocked to find that she could not feel any divine power of death. At the same time, she realized that she had been tied to a cross more than 2 meters tall. Looking at the hemp rope tying her hands and feet, she snorted disdainfully. "You want to tie me up completely with these hemp ropes?" Without any hesitation, Hila's limbs suddenly exerted force. After that, nothing changed. This is impossible? This is absolutely impossible? The moment she could not sense the divine power of death, Hila knew that she was in an illusion. She knew that her mind was trapped in the illusion space called Tsukuyumi world. However, she did not take this illusion to heart. For an existence like her, even if her mind was trapped in an illusion space, it was not a big deal. However, when she found that she could not even break free from the hemp rope that was not even as thick as a finger, she realized that something was wrong. This was not a simple illusion space. Although Hila was not a mage, her mental power was not weak at all. It was even stronger than Loki, who had the title of mage. If it was an ordinary illusion space, she would definitely be able to break free. "I told you just now that this is my world, so don't waste your energy." Just as Hila was thinking about how to get rid of the Tsukuyumi world, more than 10 three-legged Yagata crows flew in front of her. Then they condensed into Rog's appearance. "I have to say, I underestimated you. Come on, let me see what kind of ability a ninja from Earth has." Although she had completely lost the initiative, Hila still maintained her arrogant attitude. All the attacks in the illusion space would only be reflected on the mental level. And Hila was confident in her mental power. Although more than 2,000 years of imprisonment had seriously slowed down the growth of her divine power of death, it had greatly increased her mental power. If she did not have a strong enough mental power, she would not have been able to stay awake for more than 2,000 years in captivity. Rog did not care about Hila's provocation. Instead, he looked at Hila from head to toe. He didn't say anything, nor did he do anything else. However, this seemingly simple sizing up caused Hila's dissatisfaction. This was the look of someone sizing up prey and a defeated opponent. Of course, some fallen nobles would also have such a look in their eyes when they looked at beautiful young slaves in the slave market. "You." To the prideful Hila, Rog's gaze was much more serious than any verbal or physical insult. This was blatant disregard. Ignoring her identity, ignoring her strength, ignoring everything about her. Ever since she was born, no one had ever dared to look at her like that. "Never. Are you still a man? If you want to do it, then do it quickly. Don't dilly-dally." Hila taunted again. However, Rog remained indifferent. "I know what you're thinking. You want to use the pain on the mental level to forcefully break through the illusion and return your consciousness to your body. But you don't have to waste your energy. After I pull your consciousness into the Tsukuyumi world, it's unlikely that you can escape." If he used Tsukuyumi in a normal state, Rog would indeed need to worry about whether Hila could forcefully get rid of Tsukuyumi's effects. After all, Hila's mental power was not weak, and her divine power of death was so dense that it was enough to take on the entire Asgard alone. However, he was now casting Tsukuyumi in immortal mode. Although Sage mode was not 100% compatible with Manjikyu Sharingan, it was undeniable that Sage mode greatly increased the power of ninjutsu's genjutsu. Tsukuyumi was a unique genjutsu of Manjikyu Sharingan. But in the end, Tsukuyumi was still a genjutsu, and it would also be enhanced by Sage mode. If Hela could still forcefully get rid of his Tsukuyomi in this state, he would kill himself without Hela needing to do anything. He didn't want to continue embarrassing Tsukuyomi and Shikatsu Forest Sage Mode, who had the strongest mental attacks. Not to mention he had made so many arrangements to get Hela into Tsukuyomi. First, he used the reality gem to combine with the Sharingan's genjutsu to cast a reality ninjutsu that broke the boundary between reality and illusion, thus piquing Hela's interest. Then he deliberately let Yakata, where his true body was, reveal the Manjikyu Sharingan's patterns, allowing Hela to discover his true body and take the initiative to come in front of him. Finally, he used Tsukuyomi when they were less than a meter apart. After doing so many tricks, if he still allowed Hela to get rid of Tsukuyomi, he could really gouge out his left eye. It's not up to you to decide whether I can or not. Hela's tone was as arrogant as ever. From her point of view, it was beneficial for her whether Rog attacked her here or did nothing and allowed time to pass. If Rog attacked her, she could try to use mental pain to stimulate her consciousness. If Rog didn't attack her, she could slowly wait for the illusion's effects to disappear. Therefore, no matter what Rog planned to do, she had a certain level of initiative. Before we attack, let me tell you something. Odin's actions back then might have caused you great harm. However, the premise for him to do so is that you made a mistake first. When he entrusted me with the task of stopping you from returning to Asgard, he told me earnestly that if possible, I should try my best not to kill you. 3 times. That night, he said it 3 times as if he was afraid that I would forget it. I don't know why he thought so highly of me back then and felt that I had the ability to stop you. But I have to say that he still cares about you. Back then you were indeed very strong. But don't forget that Odin was also at his peak back then. If he really wanted to kill you, you wouldn't have survived until now. Alright, that's all. It's time to put an end to this. Just as he said that, a Kusanagi no Tsurugi sword appeared in Rog's right hand, as well as 9 of him holding Kusanagi no Tsurugi swords. Next, he repeatedly drew his sword, drew his sword, drew his sword, drew his sword, drew his sword. Time passed bit by bit. After this unskilled attack and retraction lasted for half a year, Rog took the initiative to dispel Tsukuyomi. Half a year in Tsukuyomi, 1 second in reality. Immortal Rog vs. Goddess of Death Hela. Rog wins. Chapter 459. Although the battle on the main battlefield was not over yet, the second family dispute in Odin's family had already come to an end. Whether the Frost Giants and the Undead Army chose to resist to the end, this war would end with Asgard's victory. Hela had lost. The Frost Giants and the Undead Army were destined to lose. I will fulfill my promise with Odin and spare your life. As long as you don't return to Asgard, you can go wherever you want. Rog looked at Hela, who was half kneeling on the ground, and said indifferently. Then he closed his Mangekyo Sharingan and removed Sage Mode and would clone. Hela still had a large amount of divine power of death in her body, but her mind was severely damaged, and it was impossible for her to continue fighting. If she wasn't Asgard and had used the divine power of death to strengthen her body, she wouldn't even be able to half kneel. The attack lasted for half a year before Hela's mind was completely destroyed. Both of them were hit by Tsukuyomi. Hulk lasted for 3 days while Luonan lasted for 5 days. Hulk had the strongest body, but his mental power was the weakest among the 3 of them. Therefore his resistance time was the shortest among the 3. When the 4 violet flame formation completely dissipated, Rog used quantum teleportation and came to the other side of the forest. After confirming that Hela could no longer see his figure, he sat on the ground without caring about his image and closed his eyes. Maintaining the Tsukuyomi for half a year was also a great burden on his mind. If he hadn't deliberately improved his immortal body before, his mind might not have been able to last until Hela collapsed. In terms of willpower, Hela was definitely the strongest he had met so far. As expected of someone who hadn't broken down after being locked up alone for more than 2,000 years. Her willpower was tenacious. Ordinary people would be at risk of a mental breakdown after being locked up for a few days. And Hela had been locked up by Odin for more than 2,600 years. If he remembered correctly, Europe was still in the ancient Greek period and China was still in the spring and autumn period. No wonder Loki looked down on Earthlings so much. The average lifespan of Asgard people was as high as 5,000 years. Other than the Wuxia civilization that had not been cut off, the average lifespan of the other civilizations on Earth was not as long as the Asgard people. After the 4 violet flame formation disappeared, the Frost Giants and Asgard's warriors knew that the battle between Rog and Hela had ended. However, because Rog and Hela did not appear, they could not be sure who the victor was. Although the 4 violet flame formation was no longer blocking them, They all tacitly chose to wait for the result instead of entering the forest to personally confirm it. Time passed slowly, and half an hour after the four purple flame formation disappeared, they still did not see Hela and Log. Could it be that they had perished together? This conjecture appeared in everyone's mind. After some serious consideration, Thor waved the Thor's hammer in his hand, intending to take a look himself. If Hela had won, then he would inherit Rog's unfulfilled wish, and fight with Hela to the end. At the same time he would avenge Rog. Just as he was about to fly into the forest created by the tree world's descent, a figure slowly floated up from the forest and flew hundreds of meters into the air. It was Rog. The winner was Rog. After seeing that the person floating in the air was Rog, all the Asgard people, including Thor, let out an excited roar. Although they did not know how Rog had done it, they knew that this time Rog had won. They had won. Long live Asgard. It was unknown which Asgard soldier took the lead to shout this sentence. Then one soldier after another followed suit, converging into a huge wave of cheers that could topple mountains and overturn seas. Compared to the Asgard army whose morale had reached its peak, the Frost Giant's expressions were extremely ugly. Lost. He had lost once again. Although they were forced to join Hela's side, a loss was a loss. They had once again lost to Asgard. Amidst the cheers of the Asgard soldiers, the Frost Giants put down the weapons in their hands and sat down on the bone-chilling ground as if they had accepted their fate. The Frost Giants used their actions to prove their surrender, while the undead army continued to charge toward the Asgard soldiers without a care for their own lives. Just as the morale of the Asgard soldiers had reached its peak and were about to send the undead back to where they belonged, these brave undead soldiers were like wheat that had been blown by the wind. One by one they fell down, and the death energy in their bodies quickly dissipated into the air. In less than a few seconds, not a single undead soldier could be seen standing on the battlefield. Hela had made her move. She had personally ended her own undead army. Asgard's golden palace, Odin's bedroom. After returning from Jotunheim to Asgard, Rog, Thor, and Loki immediately went to Odin's bedroom. Odin, who was shrouded in a pale golden energy shield, was at the end of his life. Although he was nourished by Asgard's energy, Odin had still reached the end of his life. When Thor half knelt in front of Odin's bed and reported the results of the battle to Odin with a choked voice, Rog slowly came to the other side of the bed. I have fulfilled our bargain, and she has left Jotunheim alive. She asked me to give this to you and tell you something. Asgard's eldest princess and the goddess of death died the day you sent out the Valkyrie army. The dead will never appear in Asgard again. With that he put the black sword in his hand beside Odin. Sword of the night sky. This was the weapon that had accompanied Hela the longest. It was also a gift from Odin on the day she awakened the divine power of death. After putting down the sword of the night sky, Rog did not say anything else and silently left Odin's bedroom. The rest of the time belonged to Thor and Loki. That night, the king of Asgard, the father of gods, Odin, passed away. A legend of a generation had come to an end. One day later, Asgard held an Asgard-style funeral for Odin and the soldiers who died in Jotunheim. After attending Odin's funeral, Rog and the others left Asgard and returned to Earth. The moment they stepped onto the Rainbow Bridge with the Eternal Fire and the giant wolf Fenrir, Rog went to Thor who was sending them off and gave him a serious order. Protect Asgard well. If you need anything, contact me at any time. Also, be careful of Thanos. Chapter 460. Although the current timeline was becoming more and more different from what he remembered, and even began to develop in a direction that no one knew. But no one knew if Thanos, the crazy titan, would directly take the space gem after Odin's death. In order to prevent Saul from truly becoming a loner, Log had specifically instructed him to take care of himself. Be careful of Thanos? However, Thor did not understand Rog's meaning at all. Although Asgard was a universal civilization, it was different from the Kerry Empire and Xandar. Asgard was the kind of existence that did not like to deal with the outside world. Except for the 9 lands, Asgard did not care about other things that happened in the universe. Yes, be careful of Thanos. If you meet him, remember to contact me immediately, don't try to be brave. Because of himself, the current Thor was weaker than Rog's memory. According to the original timeline, Thor should have completely awakened the power of thunder, instead of still foolishly thinking that he could only control lightning through Thor's hammer. What's more, even if Thor was truly awakened, there was still a long way to go before Thanos. Without relying on foreign objects, Thor after awakening was still not as good as Thanos with his bare hands. Although this comparison was a bit cruel, it was true. Okay, I know. Thor did not continue to ask. After knowing Rog for so long, he knew that Rog had many unknown secrets. Since Rog did not take the initiative to mention it, he would not continue to ask. After instructing Thor, Rog walked into the Bifrost with the giant wolf Fenrir and left Asgard. Although Asgard rarely dealt with the cosmic civilizations outside the Nine Lands, the news of the death of Odin, the father of all gods, would soon spread throughout the universe. At that time, who knew how many ambitious guys would target Asgard? Although he had a good relationship with Thor, Rog could not replace Thor to protect Asgard. Protecting Asgard was the duty of the king of Asgard. It was also the first test after Thor inherited the throne. Hulk and Tani returned directly to the headquarters in the suburbs of New York through the Bifrost, while Rog returned to Konoha's headquarters in Washington with Fenrir. When Fenrir, with a shoulder height of 4 or 5 meters and a body length of more than 10 meters, walked out of the transmission beam of the Bifrost, a harsh alarm immediately sounded in the Konoha headquarters. However, this alarm only sounded for a few seconds before it was turned off by Hinata. This was because Rog had also walked out of the Rainbow Bridge. Although Fenrir was larger in size, it walked out of the Bifrost earlier than Rog. The reason was simple. When it knew that it was going to the Earth, it became like a husky going to the wild and entered a state of excitement. Even in the fully automatic transmission beam of the Bifrost, it couldn't help but run forward for a distance, trying to reach the Earth earlier. However, when it really walked out of the transmission beam, its excitement immediately disappeared. In Fenrir's memory, the Earth was a country full of food. However, the scene in front of it was completely different from what it remembered. There was no grassland, no forest, no food. The air was also filled with an unpleasant smell. "What are you doing? Let's go." Looking at the motionless Fenrir, Rog turned his head and urged. "Woo!" After letting out a disappointed whimper, Fenrir lowered its head and followed behind Log listlessly. Although Fenrir didn't look like a creature from the Earth, since it was a pet brought back by Rog, the people of Konoha were not surprised. In the hearts of the people of Konoha, Rog was not only a synonym for strength, but also a synonym for mystery. Even if he said one day that he was a god from ancient times, or an alien from other planets, they wouldn't think he was joking. Because of its huge size, there was no room suitable for Fenrir to live in Konoha. Therefore, Rog took Fenrir directly to a fighter hangar in the headquarters of Konoha. "You live here for the time being. I will ask people to transform the environment here later to make it slightly more in line with your taste. In the headquarters of Konoha, as long as you can get in, you can go. In addition, I will ask Hinata to introduce you to the people in the headquarters of Konoha. The guy called Abomination is your spiritual beast senpai. If there is anything you don't understand, you can..." At this point, Rog finally realized what was going on. Although Fenrir could hear them, they couldn't understand Fenrir's wolf language. "Well, I will try to make you speak as much as possible so that you can communicate with them in the future. Remember, without my permission, you can't leave the headquarters of Konoha, understand?" After Rog finished, Fenrir nodded weakly, and then directly lay on the concrete floor of the hangar. Looking at the disappointed look on Fenrir's face, Rog also sighed helplessly. It was indeed not appropriate to let Fenrir live in the hangar. But this was also something that couldn't be helped. Although summoning jutsu can ignore the distance to a certain extent and directly summon the beast to the caster's side. But summoning jutsu is not omnipotent. It is impossible to really ignore the distance and summon the beast from anywhere. If Fenrir stays in Asgard, it is basically no different from completely abandoning it. Although there is no rigorous calculation, the limit of summoning jutsu should be almost the distance of a planet. As long as it is on the same planet, it will not fail. But as long as it exceeds this distance, the probability of failure is greatly increased. Don't be so listless. When the people outside know that you are my wolf, as long as you don't enter the city where humans live, you can go anywhere you want. Touching Fenrir's huge wolf head, Rog comforted it. After comforting Fenrir, Rog used quantum transmission to return to his office. He doesn't need to do this kind of thing himself to introduce everyone in Konoha to Fenrir. Hinata will naturally arrange everything. Hinata, Project Dr. Connor's recent research report. As soon as the voice fell, a virtual display screen appeared in front of Rog, which recorded the latest research progress of Dr. Connors. Before he left the Earth, Dr. Connors had already begun his research on Super Skrull. Counting the time, more than half a month has passed. After browsing Dr. Connors' recent research report in detail, Rog frowned. Although Dr. Connors is the most proficient expert in the field of biology in Konoha, It is a pity that he is still a long way from the super geniuses like Tani and Banner. Even with 3 living super scrolls, Dr. Connor's progress is still not optimistic. Chapter 461. It can't go on like this. Konoha must train a team of scientific talents. At this moment, Rog once again envied Orochimaru. In Naruto, some people believe in bloodline, some believe in will, some believe in innate inheritance, and some believe in acquired effort. Only Orochimaru believes in science. Because of this, when all the villains died in various ways, only Orochimaru succeeded in surviving. And if there is no accident, he will even live longer than those destined protagonists. Science changes life. Science changes fate. Orochimaru is a living example. Hinata helped me search for a scientist. His name is Reed Richards. By the way, where are Susan Stone, Johnny Stone, and Ben Graham and his team? In this world there are many genius scientists. But there are very few who can really reach the level of Tani and Banner. And Reed Richards happens to be one of them. Reed Richards is currently conducting experimental research on the effects of high-energy cosmic storms caused by the coronal solar wind on the evolution of early planetary life on the space station in outer space. Susan Stone and the other 2 are also in the research team. Within a few seconds, Hinata projected the relevant information on the display screen. The effects of high-energy cosmic storms on the evolution of early planetary life? Rog was not surprised that Hinata could find Reed's whereabouts. What he wondered was how Hinata knew that Reed was working on this project. This kind of project is a research project that needs to be strictly confidential at first glance. How do you know about their research project in the space station? Rog asked curiously. A week ago, Reed Richards submitted a related project application to Konoha, hoping to get financial support and equipment support from Konoha. Hinata quickly explained. At the same time, she displayed Reed's application report. Glancing at Reed's application report, Rog had more and more questions in his mind. This kind of research has always been the research scope of biological research institutions and NASA. Why did he apply to Konoha? If Rog remembered correctly, Konoha should be a military group, not a scientific research institution. Half a year ago when you were practicing in Konoha, I synchronized the research data of number 2. From the second database, I integrated the contents of weapons research, biological research, civilian technology, and so on. Combined with Dr. Connor's research results, I established a research institute affiliated with Konoha. While Hinata was explaining, an institution named Konoha's Science and Technology Laboratory appeared on the screen. Konoha's Science and Technology Laboratory? Looking at this familiar name, Rog remembered something that he had neglected. When he was training in Konoha's hidden village, Hinata mentioned to him the proposal to establish a laboratory to improve the research and development level of Konoha's technology. At that time he agreed to the proposal, but he quickly put this matter to the back of his mind. Show me the current research projects in the laboratory. Then the display in front of him changed again. There were many ongoing projects in the laboratory, covering mechanical engineering, quantum physics, new energy, artificial intelligence, biology, genetic engineering, medicine, and many other fields. In addition to the research carried out with the data and equipment he brought back from the Carey Empire and Xander, the laboratory also sponsored a lot of private research. After quickly browsing through the dozens of research projects being carried out in the laboratory, Rog sighed. Then he said in a serious tone, "Hinata, you are playing with fire." Hinata, who had always answered his questions, suddenly became quiet at this time. It wasn't until more than 10 seconds later that she replied, "Hinata wants to try it." What Rog said about playing with fire was not referring to Hinata's further research on the alien technology and data, but the research that Hinata was conducting in secret. On the surface, there was nothing wrong with the research being carried out in the laboratory. But from these studies, Rog saw some unabashedly related projects. And after all these related projects were integrated, it was a taboo research that challenged the laws of nature. Androids. The project that Hinata was secretly researching was androids. Not clones nor artificial intelligence robots like Ultron, but androids in the true sense. Rog thought that Hinata should be the most obedient of all his subordinates. However, he didn't expect that Hinata's madness was far beyond that of others. After 2 or 3 minutes of silence, he spoke again, "End these research projects." Rog-sama, Hinata's electronic synthetic voice, which had always been emotionless, showed obvious fluctuations. "These things can't be studied on Earth. All of them will be transferred to Konoha's hidden village. I will give you the highest authorization authority. You can mobilize all of Konoha's resources. The calculation matrix data of Genjutsu, Dr. Banner's plan to implant artificial intelligence into organic creatures, Dr. Zhao Hailuan's Cradle of Regeneration Project data. I will find a way to get these materials to you. Since you want your own body, then I will help you. In terms of madness, Rog was the craziest one in Konoha. Thank you, Sama. Hinata replied immediately. Don't thank me. Whether you can study the results you want depends on you. I only have one requirement: your new body can only be the same as the holographic image. As for which one to choose, you choose. After instructing Hinata, Rog put his thoughts back on Reed. Reed just went to the space station to study the space storm, so there is a high probability that he hasn't mutated yet. Of course, it is not ruled out that he won't become Mr. Miracle at all in this world. Whether he becomes Mr. Miracle or not, it won't affect Rog's plan. What he wants is just Reed's brain that is so smart that it seems to have been turned on. As for whether he mutates or not, whether he can become Mr. Miracle or not, it doesn't matter. Compared with Mr. Miracle, Rog cared more about the man named Doom. Dr. Destruction. Victor Von Doom. In this world where superheroes either relied on superpowers or advanced technology, Deity Doomu was the only man who believed in science and practiced magic. He has no superpowers, but he used his super smart brain to invent various high-tech equipment and learned magic. He was born in the poor and backward small Eastern European country of Ladovinia, but he overthrew the feudal rule here with his own ability and turned the small agricultural country of Ladovinia into a high-tech modern country. Doom may not be a good person in the conventional sense, but he is definitely a very charismatic person. Chapter 462. If there was a chance, he must meet this magic and technology dual cultivator, Lord Doom. It was no less than Iron Man's high-tech armor, and his magic level could compete with Doctor Strange's. It would be too much of a pity if such an ambitious and ruthless person did not meet him. If Rog remembered correctly, Lord Doom had a similar experience as himself. Victor Von Doom, Doctor of Destruction, was one of the few Earthlings on Earth who had fought with the Lord of Hell, Mephisto, and returned alive. And in terms of the number of times he had fought against Mephisto, Lord Doom had fought against him more than Rog. Lord Doom's mother, Cynthia, was a gypsy witch. In order to rebel against King Vladimir, who ruled Ladovinia at the time, she prayed for power from Mephisto. The result was no different from the previous supplicants. Lord Doom's mother was deceived by Mephisto, and her soul was imprisoned in hell, becoming Mephisto's plaything. After overthrowing the old king's rule, Lord Doom summoned Mephisto and accepted Mephisto's bet. Every year, Mephisto gave Lord Doom a chance to fight for his mother's freedom. If he won, his mother's soul would regain freedom and ascend to heaven. If he lost, the people of Ladovinia would despise him. Every time he lost, his people would despise him even more. If he lost too many times, Doom would become the most useless and incapable ruler in the history of Ladovinia. Lord Doom set the town where his mother, Cynthia, died as the new capital of Ladovinia. When the blizzard came, he would come to the deepest dungeon of Ladovinia to fight for the freedom of his mother, Cynthia. In Rog's memory, Lord Doom finally joined forces with Doctor Strange and successfully deceived Mephisto, allowing his mother to be redeemed and ascend to heaven. However, this was only his memory before he transmigrated. As for whether this future would develop like this, he was not sure now. After all, his legendary junior brother, Doctor Strange, had yet to go to Kamartaj, let alone inherit the title of Ancient One Sorcerer Supreme. Although Lord Doom was a villain, to be honest, Rog still admired him. Except for deceiving the US military once, he didn't do anything outrageous. Note 1. From the perspective of the people of Ladovinia, he could even be regarded as a wise ruler who liberated Ladovinia. Rog wasn't sure what others thought of Lord Doom. But from his point of view, he admired Lord Doom's behavior of fighting against Lord Mephisto in order to save his mother's soul. After temporarily putting aside his appreciation for Lord Doom, he opened the information he had collected by the intelligence department. Although Sir Goddum basically didn't leave Ladovinia, Rog didn't forget to ask the intelligence department to collect information on him. After browsing through the information collected by the intelligence department, he found that Sir Goddum's life experience was basically not much different from what he remembered. Doom was 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 Doom. When he resisted the rule of the old king, some of his small inventions attracted the attention of the US military, which brought him to the United States. During his days in the United States, he received professional scientific education and invented many new weapons for the military. It was also during this period that Lord Doom met Mr. Fantastic Reed, who was also studying in the academy. In the end, he was expelled from the school because of an experimental accident and he was disfigured. Although the military didn't mind the little accident he caused, he had no intention of continuing to stay in the United States. He destroyed all the inventions he left for the military and quietly left the United States. Lord Doom's information in the United States was the most complete. Even the dormitory he lived in at the time and the girl he almost had a relationship beyond friendship with were recorded. However, the detailed records ended there. Following that, there were some scattered pieces of information. For example, Lord Doom, who was disfigured, returned to Ladovinia at some point and then relied on the destruction robots and magic he invented to overthrow the rule of the old king. At the end of the information, there was also the internal structure and programming algorithm of the destruction robots specially collected by the intelligence department. Although Konoha's intelligence department is not weak, it is not strong enough to inquire about the top-secret information of other countries at will. The reason why they can get this information about the destruction robots is purely because Lord Doom used this information as a compulsory subject for high school students in Ladovinia and as a graduation exam content. According to the information collected by the intelligence department, this is a decision made by Lord Doom in order to raise the next generation's awareness of danger in times of peace and to improve the ability of Ladovinia's citizens to protect themselves and fight back in times of national disaster. Note 2. One had to admit that Sir God Dumu's way of doing things was very unique. But Rog appreciates his approach. This is what it means to be a formidable person. If there is a chance, Rog really wants to have a drink with this Lord Doom. Time passed day by day. Because he had just completed the commission of Thor, Rog didn't have much interest in wandering outside these days. He stayed at Konoha's headquarters to digest the reward he just received. Plus the 350 ninja coins reward he got from the commission, he now has 660 unspent ninja coins. Although the number is a lot, he doesn't have anything in particular to exchange for now, so he didn't exchange any new ninjutsu or Kekkei Genkai for himself. In the past few days, his main focus has been on the Eternal Fire. Like the Infernal Fire, the Eternal Fire is also a supernatural special flame. And in terms of energy level, the Eternal Fire is a little higher than the Infernal Fire. However, unlike the Infernal Fire that can perfectly match humans, the Eternal Fire's compatibility with humans is not high. The Eternal Fire is the most powerful treasure of the flame giant Surtur. After combining with his crown, it can grow to the point where he can destroy Asgard with a single sword strike. Although Rog got the Eternal Fire that Surtur dreamed of getting back, now there is an awkward problem in front of him. He is not the flame giant Surtur. He can't perfectly match the Eternal Fire. It's not difficult for him to simply use the Eternal Fire. But if it's just simple use, it will undoubtedly be a great waste of the Eternal Fire. As a careful ninja, he absolutely can't tolerate this kind of wasteful behavior. After studying it carefully for 3 days and confirming that he can't exert the power of the Eternal Fire to the maximum by relying on his own ability, he remembered his cheap teacher. Sorcerer Supreme Ancient One. The strongest sorcerer on Earth, no one can compare to him. Even if the scope is expanded to the entire universe, Sorcerer Supreme Ancient One is one of the strongest peak existences in the magic domain. At this time, Rog once again understood why his fellow travelers were keen to bring an old man with them. If you have difficulties, find your teacher. Without further ado, Rog used quantum teleportation to come to Fenrir's new home, and woke it up from its afternoon nap. Get up and come with me to see my teacher. Before Fenrir was completely awake, he opened the portal to Kamartaj, and then rushed the confused Fenrir into the portal. If it's just to see Ancient One, Rog can go by himself. In order to avoid Fenrir being attacked by Kamartaj sorcerers as a different world's magical beast in the future, it's necessary to introduce Fenrir to Kamartaj's people in advance. Although most of the sorcerers in Kamartaj can't be Fenrir's opponent, the process still has to be followed. At least after doing this, Kamartaj's people will know that Fenrir is his wolf and enjoys his protection. Of course, if Fenrir causes any trouble, he will also take full responsibility. It's a very irresponsible practice to only enjoy the pleasure brought by pets and not be responsible for the behavior of pets. Before crossing, he was extremely disgusted with those irresponsible poop picker. Just like when he returned to Konoha headquarters, when Fenrir appeared in Kamartaj, it immediately put Kamartaj into a state of alert. But when they saw Rog riding on Fenrir's back, these sorcerers quickly calmed down as if nothing had happened. You stay here and don't go anywhere. If someone wants to come and touch you, you have to bear with it first. After that, Rog left Fenrir alone in the square and quickly disappeared in front of him. It didn't take long for him to come to the familiar reception hall and saw Ancient One, who was still making tea. He didn't know if it was his own illusion, but when he saw Ancient One again he felt that his cheap sensei seemed to be different. However, he couldn't pinpoint exactly what was different. It was just a pure intuition. "Sensei," Rog said respectfully, and then sat on the futon opposite Ancient One. "Life and death are one of the basic laws of the world. It's not a good habit to bring a dead life back to the world." Ancient One's tone was as calm as ever, but Rog could hear that she was hinting that his practice was a bit over the line. "Only this time, there won't be a next time." After taking the honey tea handed over by Ancient One, Rog silently explained. "Tell me, what did you encounter this time?" After taking a sip of the freshly brewed honey tea, Ancient One spoke again. "Actually, it's not a big deal. I just want to ask Sensei if you have any information about the eternal fire." As soon as his voice fell, Rog summoned a small cluster of eternal fire to his right hand and displayed the eternal fire in front of Ancient One. After he summoned the eternal fire, Ancient One's eyes suddenly lit up, and then she picked up the folding fan on the table with her left hand, and forcibly guided the eternal fire burning in his right hand onto the folding fan. "This works too?" Although he watched Ancient One use the folding fan to guide away the eternal fire in his hand, Rog didn't feel anything strange at all. He couldn't even see what kind of technique Ancient One had used. An expert is an expert. Any casual move is mysterious and unpredictable. Rog sighed silently in his heart, and then patiently waited for Ancient One's answer. "The last time I saw the eternal fire, it was in Odin's treasure house. In the blink of an eye, things have changed." Ancient One, who has always been calm, showed a rare look of regret. "This is the treasure of the flame giant Surtur, which you should know very well. Looking at you, you should want to know how to fully exert the power of the eternal fire." Ancient One glanced at Rog and then continued, "The eternal fire is a treasure that is bound to Surtur's soul. Except for him, no one can exert the power of the eternal fire to the limit. Odin can't do it, and I can't do it either. To some extent, you can understand the eternal fire as Surtur's exclusive weapon. Although you can't exert the eternal fire to the same extent as Surtur, it's not impossible to exert its power as much as possible." Having said that, Ancient One paused for a moment and let the eternal fire on the folding fan fly back to Rog's hand. To explain it in scientific terms, you can think of the eternal fire as controllable nuclear fusion, which is the so-called artificial sunday, but when using this artificial sun, you need to prepare the corresponding instruments in advance. For example, Surtur's Twilight Sword. Of course, if you just want to find more ways to use it, there are a lot of corresponding books in the library. You can borrow them. After that, Ancient One stopped talking and tasted the honey tea in front of him seriously. "Thank you, teacher, I will visit you next time." Rog did not continue to disturb Ancient One and left the reception hall directly and returned to the square outside. "I'm going to stay here for a while. Do you want to go back to the headquarters, or do you want to stay here with me?" In the short term, he doesn't plan to leave Kamartaj, at least before the initial integration of the eternal fire into the existing combat power system. He won't leave. Woo. Okay, I see. I'll tell the people here that you can go outside and play, but only if you don't hurt anyone. Can you do that? Woo, Fenrir answered excitedly and tried to shoot out its tongue to lick Rog. But before it had time to stick out its tongue, Rog disappeared in front of it. After talking to the sorcerer who was in charge of dealing with the creatures from another world, he returned to Fenrir and opened the portal to the Himalayas. Without needing his instructions, when the portal opened, Fenrir ran in like a runaway husky. Looking at Fenrir, who looked like a mad dog, Rog sighed helplessly. While he was talking to Ancient One, Fenrir saw the Himalayas in the distance, and then could no longer suppress its yearning for nature. Out of respect for Fenrir and for its psychological health, Rog agreed to Fenrir's little request. As for whether the appearance of Fenrir will attract the attention of the outside world to the magical creatures of the Himalayas, he didn't care. He has already considered that if Fenrir is discovered by the outside world, he will announce Fenrir's existence to the public on the grounds of capturing a prehistoric mysterious creature. If it is not discovered, it is even simpler. Fenrir is a brand new pet dog breed recently improved by Konoha. Docile and loyal, warm and friendly, smart and alert, it is the most loyal and reliable friend of people in the future. As for whether people will believe this, with Konoha's current reputation among people, it is not difficult. After releasing Fenrir, Rog came to the room where he lived and changed into the Kamartaj standard robe. Although whether he changes his robe or not, other sorcerers know that he is a student of Ancient One. But, when in Rome, do as the Romans do. Since he plans to study in Kamartaj for a while, it is best to follow the customs of Kamartaj. This has nothing to do with strength and status, it is purely a kind of respect. In this way Rog once again started his learning journey in Kamartaj. Unlike the last time he had Ancient One to teach him personally, this time he can only learn by himself. Outer Space Private Research Space Station. The cosmic storm is accelerating, and it will come in a few minutes, not a few hours. Reed Richards, who was wearing a light blue uniform, said nervously to Susan Stone, who was next to him. We have less than 6 minutes left. After checking the latest observation data, the blonde Susan said anxiously. Damn it. After getting the latest data, Reed cursed and then ran quickly to the other side of the space station. Ben, come in right away. While running to the observation room, Reed used his portable communicator to contact Ben, who was working outside the space station. I've just finished half of my work, top student. Ben, wearing a spacesuit, turned his head to look at the observation room and replied with a smile. Ben, come back right away. Reed said again. Ben heard Reed's anxiety. After working with Reed for so many years, it was the first time he heard Reed's anxious tone. Although he didn't know what was going on, Ben decided to follow Reed's reminder and return to the space station. However, at the moment he turned around, he saw a cosmic vision that he had never seen before. In the orange-red cosmic storm, energy beams flashed like golden lightning. This cosmic storm, more gorgeous than the aurora, quickly approached the space station at a terrifying speed. Brothers, I can't go back. Ben said with a bitter smile and a resigned tone. Ben, jump over here, this is the only way. At this time, Susan's younger brother, Johnny, gave his own advice. At the same time, Susan in the main control room ignored the reminders of the other staff and ran to the observation room. However, she didn't expect that just as she ran out of the door of the main control room, the staff inside activated the protective shield and completely isolated the main control room. In terms of safety procedures, these staff's approach was not wrong. However, at a time like this, their choice was a little too inhumane. Susan ignored the gradually closing protective shield and continued to run to the observation room. Reed and Ben were Susan's classmates and friends. The real reason why she risked her life to run to the observation room was because of her brother, Johnny. As a sister, she couldn't do nothing when her brother was in danger. While Susan quickly rushed to the observation room, Ben, wearing a heavy spacesuit, also made the craziest jump of his life so far. At the moment when Ben took off, the cosmic storm caused by the coronal solar wind came to the space station and surged through their bodies like a wave. Ben in outer space, Reed and Johnny in the observation room, and Susan on the runway were all completely swallowed by the cosmic storm at this moment. Rog's boring learning process in Kamartaj lasted for more than half a month. After he finished reading dozens of magic books that were 5 or 6 centimeters thick, he finally ended this boring magic learning journey. The more he learned about magic theories that were completely different from the scientific and technological civilization, the more he admired Lord Doom. Compared with the mainstream scientific and technological civilization of the Earth, magic explains the existence of this world from another perspective. The collision of two different civilizations brought about a subversive change in understanding. Even with the magic foundation laid by Ancient One and the ninjutsu theory he mastered, the learning of these magic theories still gave him a headache. After saying goodbye to Ancient One, Rog returned to Konoha's headquarters in Washington alone. Although he didn't bring Fenrir back, he wasn't worried that Fenrir would disappear. With summoning technique, there is no possibility of Fenrir going missing. After returning to his room, he took a comfortable bath and enjoyed a comfortable afternoon nap before coming to his office again. During the time when he was learning magic, Hinata moved all the research projects about androids in the Konoha Science and Technology Laboratory to Konoha's hidden village on Tatooine. In order to complete the research as soon as possible, Hinata even transferred her main program over and changed its position with number 2 in Konoha's hidden village. Now Hinata number 2 is in charge of Konoha's headquarters. Number 2, is there any recent news about mysterious creatures in the Himalayas? Yes. As soon as the voice fell, number 2 projected the relevant news in front of Rog. Although there are few people in the Himalayas, there are still many mountaineers and indigenous people who found traces of Fenrir. In addition to the pictures taken by these mountaineers and indigenous people, Fenrir's traces were also discovered by reporters from some news channels. Giant wild wolf in the Himalayas, suspected to be a prehistoric ancient creature. Prehistoric behemoth appears. Top biologists gather in the Himalayas. The mythical wolf? The view of Norse mythology researchers. The sign of the end. The countdown to the destruction of human civilization. Unlike the previous news about unknown creatures, the news published recently, without exception, took clear photos. One of the most intuitive pictures was when Fenrir came in front of a photographer and ate the photographer's transportation, a pack horse that had just reached adulthood. The picture of Fenrir opening its mouth and quickly swallowing the pack horse was completely captured by the photographer, letting the audience around the world understand a fact they should have known long ago. Wolves in the wild are dangerous. Giant wild wolves in the wild are even more dangerous. Number 2, prepare a press conference in the name of Konoha, including the following 3 points. First, for the sake of public safety, Konoha captured this prehistoric giant wild wolf. Second, after communication, this giant wolf named Fenrir expressed the desire to join Konoha's intelligence agency. Third, Konoha agreed to the application of the giant wolf Fenrir and reached a consensus on friendly cooperation and joint maintenance of the world's security. Although this is a statement that can't stand up to scrutiny and can even be regarded as very deceptive, Rog doesn't care about this at all. He just needs an opportunity to publicly announce Fenrir. As for whether other people believe it or not, it's their problem. If they have any dissatisfaction, they can ask Fenrir's wolf in person. However, he estimated that no one would dare to do this, and Fenrir would never pay attention to them. Okay, the time of the press conference is scheduled at 1 o'clock tomorrow afternoon. The location is in the headquarters square. Number 2 quickly gave a reply. Reed Richards and the others have not returned to the Earth. If they come back, send them an invitation letter from Konoha and invite them to come to Konoha. After solving Fenrir's matter, Rog turned his attention back to Reed. A week ago, the space station where Reed Richards was located was hit by a cosmic storm, and the research was forced to be suspended. At present, they are being observed in isolation in the hospital to check whether they have been exposed to radiation from the cosmic storm. The test results are normal, and they can be discharged from the hospital tomorrow. This is their physical examination report. After that, Number 2 projected the examination report of Reed and the others. Send them an invitation letter first, and arrange a team of special forces to pick them up. I hope to see the 4 of them after the press conference. Rog didn't look at the examination report given by Number 2. Since Reed and the others suffered from the cosmic storm, their fate was doomed. The Fantastic Four. Whether they want to or not, this is their next life. As for why the hospital's examination report shows normal, the reason is very simple. Because the radiation impact of the cosmic storm has not yet begun, they are now in the final stage of normal human beings. After a while, they can completely say goodbye to the identity of normal human beings. The next afternoon, the press conference about Fenrir was held on time, and Rog also summoned Fenrir, who was playing in the Himalayas, back in advance. He did not attend the press conference but gave the task to Frank the Punisher. As he guessed, when Frank seriously said the excuse he casually made up yesterday, the reporters present showed an expression of, "Are you kidding me?" Although they knew that this was an excuse to fool people, after seeing Fenrir lying next to Frank, they wisely chose to shut up. The press conference ended smoothly according to the established process, and Fenrir officially became a Konoha agent with a legal establishment. Not long after the press conference, Rog saw the future Fantastic Four in the conference room. Just as he remembered, the man who looked like a researcher was Reed Richards, the future Mr. Fantastic. The bald, brawny man was Ben Graham. He used to be a pilot in the Marine Corps. Now he was a NASA astronaut and a future Stone Man. The youngest and most handsome one was Johnny Stone. He was an arrogant and unruly mechanic-cum-racer who did things his own way. He was the future Thunderfire. As for the last one, it was the future Invisible Woman, Susan Stone. Like her younger brother Johnny, Susan has a good appearance, a beautiful face, a curvy figure, and an amazing career. Hello, nice to meet you. I'm Rog, the current director of Konoha Intelligence Agency. After seeing Reed and the others come in, Rog, who was sitting on the sofa, took the initiative to stand up and introduce himself. Hello, my name is Reed. Reed introduced himself with a puzzled look on his face. He then shook hands with Roger in a daze. With Reed taking the lead, the other 3 introduced themselves one after another. Sit anywhere, you don't have to be so nervous, I'm not a bad person. People who know me know that I'm a very kind person. Rog said with a smile, and then sat on the sofa opposite the 4 of them. However, his explanation did not ease the tension of Reed and the others, but made them more nervous. Reed and the others couldn't be blamed for being too nervous. After all, Rog's image in the outside world was a bit too domineering. Coupled with his superhero identity, this made Reed and the others, who were ordinary people, involuntarily feel a pressure and nervousness that seemed to come from their biological instincts. The four of you are professionals in your respective fields. This time I invited you here in the hope that you can join Konoha and help Konoha better maintain world peace. Rog did not tell them about the Super Skrull, but directly invited the four of them to join Konoha. Rog-san, I'm sorry, we all have our own research, it may not be convenient for us to join Konoha. After more than 10 seconds of silence, Reed cautiously expressed his opinion. I don't object to you having your own research, but what I want to say is that joining Konoha will make it more convenient for you to carry out your own research. Whether it's equipment, funds, or personnel, Konoha can provide you with everything you need. If the information I got is correct, Reed, the fourth installment of your Baxter Building payment is almost overdue, right? Normally, a genius scientist would not be short of money. Especially in a capitalistic society like America. However, not every genius scientist could go through the initial stage of accumulation. The higher the level of the research project, the more resources it required. Science and technology required financial support. Can we really get everything we need? The one who spoke wasn't Reed but the youngest, Johnny. That's right, everything. Including your little hobbies, Konoha can satisfy you. Among the four of them, Johnny was definitely the easiest to tempt. Greedy, lustful, doing things his own way, hedonistic. I'm in. After receiving Roger's confirmation, Johnny didn't even think about it before agreeing to it. A wise decision. Welcome to the team. With Johnny's good start, the rest of the matter became much simpler. Since Johnny joined, Susan would naturally join as well. As for Reed and Ben, after a few minutes of serious consideration, they finally agreed to Rog's invitation. The future Fantastic Four now belonged to Konoha. Chapter 463. Other than Johnny, the other three didn't seem to be very willing to do so. But Rog didn't take it to heart. Although in web novels, there was never a lack of protagonists who would join in regardless of life and death. But he never felt that this kind of thing would happen to him. You encountered a sudden space storm in the space station last week. Although you have done a detailed examination and received normal test results. But I see something different in you. If you don't mind, you can stay in Konoha for a few days. After you stabilize a little, you can consider whether you want to live in the Konoha headquarters. Rog didn't directly tell the four of them that they were going to mutate soon. Instead he said it like a fraud. Something different? If the person who said this wasn't Rog, Reed wouldn't believe a word. As a super genius with a doctorate in engineering, mathematics, physics and other fields, Reed didn't have any doubts about the results of scientific tests. In this regard, Reed was very similar to the former Tani. They both felt that everything in the world could be explained by science. However, the facts proved again and again that science was not the only truth in the world. Tani has further expanded his thinking and vision, while Reed stayed at the stage before Tani. Sorry, is it convenient to ask what it is? For some reason, Susan always felt that Rog seemed to know something, but he didn't want to disclose it to them. I just saw something from you that doesn't belong to Earth. I'm not sure what it is. Maybe we just need to wait a few days and we will know the final answer. Rog continued to speak in the tone of a charlatan. There is nothing to be afraid of. Didn't we do a comprehensive physical examination? We are healthy. Unlike Reed and Susan, who had solemn expressions, Johnny had an indifferent look on his face. He could even be said to be a little happy. Golden thigh. A golden thigh thicker than he imagined. Johnny now began to fantasize about his good life after joining Konoha. Although Konoha didn't have a good reputation in the outside world, it wasn't a problem for Johnny. If he cared about other people's opinions, he wouldn't have become the arrogant and unruly person he was today. Under the lead of a female assistant with a good figure, Reed and the other three left the reception room and went to the room arranged for them by number 2. When the door of the reception room closed, Rog activated Byakugan. The words just now were purely made up based on his previous memory. He didn't see anything abnormal in Reed and the other three. But with his normal vision just now, he couldn't see anything abnormal. However, when he activated Byakugan and used his unreasonable supervision to look at them, he saw what he wanted to see. The radiation mutation brought about by the cosmic storm had begun. He looked away from Susan, closed Byakugan, and began to organize the things he had to deal with next. First, he had to help the Fantastic to adapt to the superpowers as soon as possible. Even if he did not intervene, the four of them would be able to completely adapt to the changes in their bodies. However, this would take a lot more time. And time was the cost. After dealing with the four of them, he would take the time to go to Ladovinia, which was ruled by Lord Dumb, to meet this supervillain, who was both good and evil. He also wanted to see if he could cooperate with Lord Doom, such as joining forces to deal with Lord Mephisto. Finally, he had to wait for the results of Dr. Connors and Reed's research on the Super Skrull's cloning ability. Of course, while waiting for the results of the research, he wouldn't be idle. After all, no one knew how long it would take the two of them to study the best results. In addition to these things, there were basically some routine activities such as daily training and executing commissions. If everything went well, this should be his next arrangement. If it didn't go well, for example, if Thanos suddenly had the idea of Asgard without Odin, then it was hard to say what would happen next. On the first day of Reed and the others' stay in Konoha, nothing special happened. Although the mutation in their bodies continued, it had not developed to the point where it was obvious. On this day, Rog basically took them around Konoha and introduced them to the people of Konoha so that they had a preliminary understanding of Konoha. As he guessed, when Reed saw the Super Skrull research being carried out by Dr. Connors, he was completely attracted. The reason why Reed went to the space station for research was to study the impact of the cosmic storm on the early life of a planet. But now, there were 3 Super Skrulls that did not belong to Earth in front of him, showing him another possibility of planetary life. For Reed, this was like a scene that would only appear in his beautiful imagination, suddenly appearing in reality. It was difficult to impress a genius scientist, but it was also easy to say the same thing. As long as you can provide him with a research topic that he is interested in and do not restrict his research, he will not hesitate to take the bait. Rog did not deny that Reed was a super genius, otherwise he would not have the idea of pulling him into Konoha. But Reed's genius was only reflected in scientific research. If only 1/10 of his genius could be reflected in interpersonal communication, he would not have been unable to get Susan, who he had been secretly in love with since college. Reed was attracted by Dr. Connor's research, and Johnny was completely fascinated by Konoha. There were too many things in Konoha that could impress Johnny. Rog simply agreed to take him out for a ride in a Quinjet, and he had a feeling of meeting a confidant. He almost called Rog a brother directly. Unlike Reed and Johnny, who had a strong preference, Susan and Ben were much calmer. Especially Ben, who had served in the Marine Corps, was as calm as his future superpower. Throughout the day he was like a tourist visiting Konoha, always keeping calm. As the only woman in the team, Susan was not particularly interested in the existence of research and equipment in Konoha. However, after she met Daisy and Wanda, everything was different. Both women, Susan had a natural sense of intimacy with Daisy and Wanda. More importantly, she was obsessed with Daisy's and Wanda's superpowers as if she was a superstar. It was not only men who had hero worship when they were young, but women also had it. In less than a day, the 3 of them became best friends who had been together for many years. Daisy and Wanda did not have a happy childhood, and Susan had a good childhood, which happened to be the existence they had fantasized about. For Susan, Daisy and Wanda with superpowers were the future she had fantasized about when she was a child, but she could not have it. Especially after listening to Daisy's story of leading Konoha's special forces to hunt down Hydra and fight the Skrull, Susan had an inexplicable worship for Daisy. The friendship between women was born so quickly. The first day of Reed's group of 4 in Konoha passed peacefully. Except for Ben, the other 3 were well integrated into Konoha's life. Reed went to Dr. Connor's lab early in the morning to study the Super Skrull with Dr. Connors. Johnny, who had just finished driving the Quinjet yesterday, had his eyes on Rog's limited edition sports car in Konoha's garage today. After getting Rog's permission, he drove the sports car out of Konoha's headquarters and began his hunting trip in Washington. As for Susan, Rog did not know where she went today. According to Number 2's report, Daisy, Wanda, and Susan quietly left Konoha's headquarters at dawn. Rog did not ask Number 2 to confirm their whereabouts. With Daisy and Wanda's abilities, even if they encountered trouble, they had enough ability to solve it. The only thing he had to worry about was whether or not Susan would suddenly awaken her superpower outside. However, with Daisy and Wanda, even if Susan really awakened her superpower outside, it would not be a particularly troublesome matter. Both Daisy and Wanda had experienced the awakening of their superpowers and had enough experience to deal with this kind of thing. It was night in an instant. Just when Rog thought that today would be peaceful, Number 2 suddenly took the initiative to project in front of him, interrupting his preparation to fall asleep. At this time, Number 2 projected the image of Hinata after her marriage. And the projected image was the kind that Rog had never seen before. Although Number 2 still looked like Hinata, it was Hinata wearing a classic kimono. Rog clearly remembered that he had never seen Hinata in this image before. Before he could ask no. 2 reported, "Sir, there's an abnormal energy fluctuation in Ben Graham's room. Should we arrange for guards to go over? Abnormal energy fluctuation? After hearing number two's report, Rog did not hesitate and immediately gave the order. Immediately seal his room and inform Reed and the other two. No need to arrange guards. I'll go there myself. As soon as his voice fell, Rog's body shone with a brilliant aurora-like light, and then completely disappeared from the room. At the same time, Reed and the other two also received number two's notice and went to Ben's room. The moment they walked out of the door, they saw Rog already at the door of Ben's room. What's wrong with Ben? Reed immediately ran to Rog and asked anxiously. If I explain it in a way that you're familiar with, then Ben is now mutating, a mutation at the DNA level. Rog explained calmly. At this time, Reed and the other two noticed that the veins around Rog's eyes were bulging. This made his white eyes, which were already different from ordinary people's, become even more strange. Mutation? How did he mutate? How did you know? Reed retracted his attention from Rog's Byakugan and asked 3 questions in a row. I saw it with my eyes. My eyes can see some things that ordinary people can't. Rog did not explain the Byakugan's ability in detail. Cool. Can I have this kind of eye too? Johnny would always be the most indecent of the Fantastic Four. No. Rog looked at the 3 of them and then turned off the Byakugan. He used the Byakugan to confirm the situation of Johnny and the other 2 and found that they had also reached the critical point of complete mutation. Perhaps in a few seconds, they would be like Ben in the room and display their respective superpowers. Then what are we waiting for? We need to. Seeing that Rog had no intention of entering the room to help Ben, Reed's face showed some dissatisfaction. However, before he could finish, there was a series of loud crashing sounds in the room. Dong, 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 dong. The dull crashing sounds like rocks hitting the wall made Reed and the other 2 involuntarily take a few steps back. They looked at the door that was only a meter away from them with hesitation and panic. This is the reason. Mutation is not eating or sleeping. Changing from one form to another is not an easy process. Of course, if you want to go in and persuade Ben, I can ask number 2 to open the door for you. Just as Rog finished speaking, an even more intense crashing sound came from the room. Boom. Along with the sound of the collision, the automatic metal door in the room also shook violently. Ben began to attack the door. Ben, is he going to be okay? Susan asked Roger with a nervous look on her face. No. It's just a little painful the first time, it won't happen in the future. Rog's expression was as calm as ever. Although Ben made a lot of noise, he was not worried at all. Even if Ben mutated, it was nothing more than turning from a normal human into a stone man. Not to mention Ben, who was less than 2 meters tall, he had even killed 2 stone golems that were 4 or 5 meters tall. Seeing Reed looking at the metal door with a worried face, Rog sighed slightly. Did the 3 of them forget something? Let me ask you a question. What do you think is the reason for Ben's mutation? In the first few seconds, Reed and the others were still seriously thinking about why Ben suddenly mutated. Then they finally reacted. Rog was not asking them why Ben mutated at all, but reminding them. Fuck. I told you a long time ago, don't study things outside the Earth, you just don't listen. Although Johnny is the least serious of the Fantastic Four, it doesn't mean that he is really brainless. You knew about this from the beginning, so you called us all to Konoha? Unlike Johnny, who complained and scolded, Susan was so calm at this time that she didn't look like a woman. No. I just guessed this possibility, but I don't have any substantial evidence. Rog certainly wouldn't say that he saw their future in other worlds, so he knew that they would become the Fantastic Four in the future. Although his explanation is not perfect, it is very consistent with his identity. He is the current director of Konoha's intelligence agency and the superhero 4th Hokage. It was completely reasonable for him to be able to guess some things. It must be that the cosmic storm fundamentally changed our DNA. Susan expressed her opinion. Let's not rush to conclusions. Before we come to a conclusion, we need to have a lot of evidence. Reed replied with the rigor of a scientist. Oh. Just as Susan and Reed were about to continue to express their opinions, Johnny suddenly spoke. Turning around, Rog and the others saw Johnny with his left hand burning. The scene in front of them was completely beyond the scope of Susan and Reed's understanding. Just as they were about to say something, the flame on Johnny's left hand suddenly soared and completely engulfed him. Johnny! Susan instinctively shouted as she looked at Johnny, who was completely engulfed by the flame. However, in the next second, a waterfall like water appeared out of thin air above Johnny's head and poured down. Johnny, who was hit by the water, staggered and directly fell to the ground. The orange-red flame burning on his body completely disappeared. What disappeared with the flame was his clothes. Johnny's mutated flame superpower was very cool, but unfortunately he mutated into a natural flame. Without oxygen it will extinguish. It will also be extinguished by a large amount of water. What Rog just used was not a newly developed water release ninjutsu, he just turned chakra into water. This kind of chakra manipulation skill is not very useful against other enemies. But it is very suitable for Johnny, who can only produce natural fire. Did you see that I can produce flames? Haha, I also have superpowers. Johnny, who was washed down by the water, directly got up and excitedly gestured with his hands open. Not only did we see the flame, but we also saw your... Rog pointed to Johnny's unusually cool lower body with his finger. Johnny looked in the direction of Rog's finger. Reaching out, turning around all in one breath. When Johnny's back was facing them, Reed leisurely said, "You are right, the cosmic storm changed our DNA." In the next second, Reed made a request to Rog. "Rog, I need to borrow Konoha's laboratory now, immediately." "No problem." After getting Rog's approval, Reed did not stop, he directly pulled Susan and quickly walked in the direction of the laboratory. "They have left, don't you want to go back and put on some clothes?" Looking at Johnny's classic naked butt, Rog warmly reminded him. Note 1, Johnny did not say a word, he lowered his head and returned to his room. A few minutes later, Ben's room was completely quiet. When there was no sound coming from inside, Rog signaled number 2 to open the door and walked into the devastated room. The originally clean and tidy room now looked like it had been bombed by a bomb. There was no complete furniture in the room, it was all broken furniture and electrical corpses. In the corner of the room, Rog saw Ben's completely changed appearance. At this time, Ben was like a bullied child, he hugged his knees and squatted in the corner. "Take it easy, fate is not as bad as you think." Ben served in the Marine Corps before, according to common sense, his will was stronger than the average person. But unfortunately, what he encountered now was a mutation that completely subverted the state of life. "I want to see Debbie, we agreed that no matter what happens we will always be together. Can you help me?" Ben said in a low tone. "Buddy, I don't think this is a good idea." Debbie was Ben's fiancée. Rog saw information about Debbie in Ben's information. "Help me, okay?" Ben made another request. "I will arrange a plane to take you there. If you need, I can let the special force go with you." "No, thank you." More than 10 minutes later, a Quinjet took off from the hangar and flew to New York with Ben, who had simply changed his clothes. Over the next few days, Reed and Dr. Connors thoroughly examined Susan, Johnny, and Ben from top to bottom, inside and out. Of course, Reed did not forget to test himself. In the process of the examination, Reed and Susan's superpowers also awakened one after another. Reed was responsible for studying the cause of the mutation, and Dr. Connors was responsible for testing their superpowers. Reed had obtained a super-elastic body. He could extend his body substantially like rubber, and he could also change his shape through super-elasticity, turning into various shapes such as cylinders, cubes, parachutes, and so on. Johnny gained the ability to create and manipulate flames. After testing, he could maintain his flames for 17 hours and achieve supersonic flight while burning his whole body. In addition, he could also burst out a flame explosion as high as 550,000 degrees Celsius, like a new star. Note 2. However, this flame explosion would exhaust all his energy and make him lose his superpowers for a short time. Susan could make herself, others, or objects invisible. However, her invisibility ability was not real invisibility, but it blocked the light and created an invisible effect on the naked eye. In addition, she could also create an invisible force field. The superpowers awakened by Reed and the other two did not cause any changes to their appearance. As for Ben, the only one who changed his appearance, he became extremely depressed after seeing Debbie. He had obtained a rock-like body and great strength, but his heart had become incomparably fragile and sensitive. Strong on the outside and soft on the inside, this was the true portrayal of Ben now. After reading the reports submitted by Reed and Dr. Connors, Rog arranged the hero titles that originally belonged to them. Mr. Fantastic Reed, Susan the Invisible Woman, Johnny the Thunderbolt, Ben the Stone Man. As for their team name, of course it was the Fantastic Four. While Reed and the other three developed and trained their superpowers, Rog did not inform anyone and quietly left Konoha's headquarters. The matter of the Fantastic Four came to an end for the time being. He was now going to see the good and evil Lord Dumb, whom he admired very much. Latovania is located in Eastern Europe, between Hungary, Romania, and Serbia. It is a small country with a population of less than 1 million. Although the population is small and the land area is small, with the help of the high-tech invented by Dumb, Ladovinia successfully developed from a backward agricultural country to a developed country without hunger and war. Rog, wearing ordinary clothes, strolled around the capital of Ladovinia like a tourist at this time, enjoying the scenery of Ladovinia. If he didn't see it with his own eyes, it would be hard to believe that this was a backward agricultural country more than 10 years ago. Rog did not pay a visit to Lord Dumb immediately. Before meeting this ambitious and ruthless man, he intended to find out what the people of Ladovinia thought of him. In a seemingly casual conversation, he obtained the information he wanted from the mouths of these ordinary people. The ordinary people have two different views on Dumb overthrowing the rule of the old king and freeing Ladovinia from war and hunger. They can be simply divided into the young people and the young people. The young people's evaluation of Dumb is more of praise and gratitude. They even have a fanatical worship of Dumb. The middle-aged people, on the other hand, have a completely different evaluation. In their view, Dumb is an out-and-out dictator, a tyrant who controls all the power in Ladovinia. Dumb decides everything. His softest breath is also the law. This sentence came from a public speech by the current Prime Minister of Ladovinia. And now, this sentence has become a catchphrase for these middle-aged people to mock Dumb. These two completely different evaluations reminded Rog of the secret bet between Dumb and Mephisto. These middle-aged people who assisted Dumb in overthrowing the old king's rule back then are now his biggest opponents. It has to be said that this is a kind of irony. But then again, even without the help of these people back then, Dumb could have overthrown the old king's rule. In a situation where strength is no longer in the same dimension, numbers are meaningless. At this time, Rog was tasting a Ladovinia specialty snack called the Whole World, and looking at the magnificent castle in the center of the capital from time to time. This is a special skewer made by skewering cooked fish balls, meatballs, bird eggs, as well as fresh green peppers, onion slices and small tomatoes, and then roasting them for a second time. In general, the taste is moderate, and the cooking method is not particularly rare. It's just that the name The Whole World is a bit interesting. The castle in the center of the city is Dumb's residence and the center of power in Ladovinia. Although Dumb has all the rights in Ladovinia, not many people in other countries know about him. He doesn't come out to deal with public affairs. These things that need to be seen are all left to the puppet prime minister. After finishing the Whole World in his hand, Rog didn't continue to waste time. He directly used quantum teleportation to enter the castle. He didn't hide his aura, and with Dumb's ability, it wasn't difficult to discover his arrival. Not to mention his magic, just his high-tech inventions were enough to let him discover an uninvited guest who entered the castle without permission. Not long after entering the castle, Rog waited for Dumb's guards, a team of guards composed entirely of robots. These robot guards, which didn't look like the style of Ladovinia at all, didn't attack him. Instead, they said unhurriedly in an electronically synthesized voice, "Mr. Rog, Lord Dumb is waiting for you in the reception room." Under the guidance of these robots, Rog entered the interior of the castle. In an antique reception room that exuded the aura of nobility everywhere, he saw the legendary Doctor of Destruction, Victor von Dumb. He was wearing a green imperial robe, a rough-looking metal mask, and a full-body armor of the same color as the mask. The imperial robe that Dumb wore was taken from the old king, symbolizing the status of the monarch of Ladovinia. The mask on his face was obtained when he was learning magic in the Himalayas. It could enhance his magic ability. Because he was too eager, he put the mask on his face before it cooled down, which made his already disfigured face even more serious. However, with the mask, others couldn't see his true appearance. Therefore, there was no substantive difference between disfigurement and more serious disfigurement. As for the armor on his body, it was the best proof of his integration of technology and magic. This set of armor can not only absorb and manipulate a variety of energy, giving him complete control of machinery, but also use all the magic he has learned. On the armor, there are even fragments of the true cross, which can resist the attacks of Dracula and other vampires and other undead creatures. Ladovinia has no intersection with Konoha. I can't think of any reason why the fourth Hokage of Konoha would come in person. Although Dumb's tone was calm, the aura exuding from his body was not calm at all. It could even be regarded as oppressive. The purpose of my visit has nothing to do with Ladovinia. I came here specifically to find you. After taking a sip of the coffee brought by the robot maid, Rog said slowly, "Find me? If I remember correctly, today is the first time we've met." If it weren't for his scruples about Rog's strength, Dumb wouldn't have wasted any time on him at all. With this kind of energy, he might as well study a few more magic spells or research a few more new inventions. We can cooperate even if it's the first time we meet, and I can guarantee that you will be very interested in my next proposal. Looking at Rog's confident look, Dum pondered for more than 10 seconds and then continued, "Tell me your proposal." "I can rescue your mother, Cynthia, from Mephisto." Rog directly showed his trump card. The moment he finished speaking, Dum, who was sitting across the long table, suddenly stood up, and his body exuded strong magic fluctuations. Along with the magic fluctuations there was also a murderous intent. Chapter 464. The secret that had never been known by anyone was exposed by Rog, who had just met him. This made Dum, who was used to having everything in his hands, feel an instinctive threat. When Dum stood up and exuded a strong magic wave and killing intent, Rog's body also shone with a light blue light. Of course, Rog knew how his words would affect Dum. Although this would make Dum wary of him, it was the only trump card that could move Dum at the moment. In order to get Dum to cooperate with him, he could only choose to take the risk and try. Moreover, even if Dum really wanted to kill him, he had enough power to protect himself. Dum looked coldly at Rog across the long table as if he was considering his final decision. "Who are you?" Dum spoke again. Although it was Dum's first time meeting Rog, he was no stranger to Rog. In fact, he knew him very well. Since Rog appeared as the masked man, Dum had been paying attention to his existence and had even quietly investigated his past. However, like everyone else, Dum's investigation of Rog could only be traced back to the time when Rog was a private investigator. As for who he was before he became a private investigator and what kind of past he had, Dum did not obtain any useful information. In the beginning, Dum even suspected that Rog was an alien from another planet just like Thor from Asgard. However, it did not take long for him to overturn this conjecture. A person who was greedy and lustful on Earth, who did whatever he wanted, and who was also extremely domineering, could not be an alien from another planet. An alien from another planet could not be so interested in the existence of Earth. Even if it was a disguise, it was impossible to disguise so thoroughly. Through the analysis of Rog's actions and the various signs shown in his daily life, Dum could be 100% sure that Rog was a pure Earthling who had lived on Earth since he was a child. After overthrowing the theory that Rog was an alien, Dum had also suspected that he was one of those supernatural cultivators with long lives. However, this conjecture was quickly overturned by him. From Dumu's point of view, although Rog was powerful enough, he wasn't steady at all. He didn't have the calmness and indifference of someone who had experienced the world. If he was not an alien, nor was he a cultivator who had lived in seclusion for many years, then it was very suspicious where Rog's strength came from. Dum knew that there were some geniuses in this world who were born far beyond ordinary people. He himself was a very obvious representative. However, Dum did not sense the aura of a genius from Rog. Coupled with the secret Rog had just revealed, Dum increasingly felt that he had signed a contract with the Lord of Hell, Mephisto. Because he had signed a contract with Mephisto's, his origins were a mystery, and he displayed great strength the moment he appeared. It was precisely because of this that he knew that his mother, Cynthia, had been imprisoned by Mephisto, and that he had a bet with Mephisto. Rog had publicly announced at the Thunder Secret Team's press conference that he was from a place called Konoha, and that he was the fourth Hokage of that mysterious hidden village. However, Dum didn't believe a single word of it. If there really was such a mysterious village on Earth, it was impossible for there to be no news of it at all. Even an existence like Kamartaj was more or less connected to the real world. Dum didn't think that the Konoha hidden village that Rog was talking about would be more mysterious and powerful than Kamartaj. "You don't have to look at me like that. I know you'll think I'm suspicious and even wonder if I have something to do with Mephisto, and if I'm someone he specially arranged. I do have something to do with him, but it's not the kind of relationship you think." With that, Rog summoned the contract that he hadn't signed with Mephisto. "You've had a lot of dealings with Mephisto. You should be able to recognize his things." Under Rog's control, the unsigned parchment contract slowly floated in front of Dum. Then the living room fell completely silent. Dum carefully checked the contract that floated over and confirmed its authenticity. In the end, Dum let the parchment contract float back to Rog. The magical fluctuations and killing intent emanating from his body completely disappeared, and he sat back on the high-back chair. "Although I don't know how you did it, you didn't sign a contract with Mephisto. You have no reason to return to hell." Dum said calmly. "Of course I have a reason to return to hell. You've also cultivated in the Himalayas, so you should have heard of the term, inner demon. I don't want a crack to appear in my cultivation state, so I have to go to hell," Rog explained. He didn't make up the term inner demon, it really existed. Even if it wasn't an extraordinary person like them, it was possible for an ordinary person to have inner demons. Among them, the most common was the so-called eternal second place in sports competitions. The Himalayas? What's your relationship with Kamartaj? As a mage, it was impossible for Dum not to know about Kamartaj's existence. Ancient One is my teacher. With that, Rog stretched out his right hand and opened a small portal that only allowed one's arm to pass through. This portal magic was one of Mage Kamartaj's signature spells. Just like the ninja school's triple body technique, a mage who hadn't learned the portal magic couldn't be considered a real Mage Kamartaj. After hearing that Ancient One was his teacher and confirming the portal magic with his own eyes, Dum dispelled his suspicion that Rog was Mephisto's subordinate. Although he was still wary of Rog, one thing he could confirm was that Rog was a student of Ancient One and couldn't be one of Mephisto's men. The name of the Sorcerer Supreme, Ancient One, was still very convincing in the extraordinary world, especially the magic world. Tell me about your plan. If it's reliable, I don't mind going to hell with you once. Dum took the initiative to ask about Rog's plan. Rog didn't hide anything and told him about the plan that originally belonged to Dum and Dr. Strange in his memory. But this time, the person who joined forces with Dr. Destruction Dum was no longer his junior brother, Dr. Strange, but himself. The plan sounds feasible, but the specific implementation steps still need to be carefully thought about. After listening to Rog's plan, Dum suddenly felt like his train of thought had been completely opened. All this time he had only been thinking about how to defeat Mephisto, win the bet and regain his mother's freedom. However, he didn't expect that there would be such an alternative way to save his mother. I agree to your plan. What do you want in return? Dum had investigated Rog, and of course he knew about Rog's strange commission, obsessive-compulsive disorder. It's very simple. I want all your magic cultivation information. In the beginning, Rog intended to get a promise from Dum. For example, he wanted him to promise that when Thanos attacked Earth, he would go all out against Thanos once, so as to achieve the tactical effect of using supervillains to fight supervillains. However, this reward was quickly rejected by him. Although the system will recognize the commission reward of the promise type, the problem is that the promise is a kind of reward with no fixed time. If Thanos never comes to Earth, he won't be able to receive Dum's promise, and he won't be able to get the commission reward given by the system, and he will always occupy the only commission slot. So, he directly changed his goal and changed the reward to Dum's magic cultivation information. Although Kamartaj doesn't lack this content, most of Kamartaj's magic belongs to the category of white magic. But Dum's magic is different. He is the kind of magic that doesn't refuse. Whether it is white magic or black magic, he has a lot of it here. And the commission reward is just a bonus. What he really wants is the ninja coins given by the system. He now has 660 unspent ninja coins. If he completes Dum's commission, he won't be too far away from 1,000 ninja coins. After he saves 1,000 ninja coins, he can exchange the Yin QB in the system and let Yin and Yang QB reunite as one. You have a big appetite, aren't you afraid of eating too much? Dum didn't doubt Rog. In his opinion, if Rog's reward was too low, then there would be a problem. He wasn't afraid of Rog's appetite, he was only worried that Rog wouldn't try his best. Although the plan proposed by Rog just now is very feasible, there is only one chance. If it fails this time, Mephisto will never be fooled a second time. A man should have a big appetite and a big dream. Rog replied with a smile. No problem, I agree, sign the scroll. As soon as Dum finished speaking, Rog threw the commission scroll that he had prepared long ago. More than 10 seconds later, a new commission appeared in the system's commission page. Commission content. Assist Professor Dum and let Cynthia's soul regain freedom. Commission status. Incomplete. Commission reward, 250 ninja coins. Dum's commission passed the judgment smoothly, and the system also gave a very reasonable commission reward. In a month we will set off for hell. Throwing the completed commission scroll back to Rog, Dum set the date of departure. Going to hell is not a trivial matter. Even Dum needs to be prepared in advance. And unlike the previous gambles, Mephisto won't be as easy to talk to as before. No problem. After putting away the commission scroll, Rog opened the portal back to Konoha's headquarters and left Dum's castle. After returning to Konoha, he first went to see the Fantastic Four who were adapting to their superpowers, and then teleported from the headquarters to Konoha's hidden village. Dum is not the only one who needs to prepare in advance. Before going to hell, he also needs to prepare well. And there is one thing he didn't disclose to Dum: that is, he plans to take something from Mephisto. Chapter 465. The last time he fought with Mephisto, he fully realized the gap between him and the Heavenly Father. Especially when this Heavenly Father was still on his home turf, he showed absolute dominance. Although he didn't go there to fight Mephisto this time, in order to ensure that his soul does not fall into the hands of Mephisto, he needs to make himself a little stronger. This time, Mephisto won't be as casual as the last time. Not to mention that Rog had just cheated him not long ago. In fact, strictly speaking, he didn't cheat Mephisto, because in another month he will go to hell again. After returning to Konoha, Rog went to see the progress of Hinata's android project. He had already received the Illusions Operational Matrix data and the Cradle of Regeneration Engineering data from Tani and Dr. Zhao Hailuan, and he had already asked number 2 to send it to Hinata. The only thing that hasn't been obtained yet is Dr. Banner's plan to implant artificial intelligence into organic creatures. Rog has a good relationship with Hulk, but his relationship with Dr. Banner is very average. And with a brutal case like Ultron in front of him, Banner was not very willing to give the plan to Rog. In Banner's view, Rog is more dangerous than Ultron. Rog didn't force Dr. Banner. When Dr. Banner clearly expressed his reluctance, he gave up the idea of getting the plan from Dr. Banner. The reason is simple, because he now has Mr. Fantastic Reed, who is no worse than Dr. Banner. Although Reed's awakened superpower is not very good, Reed's most precious thing is his cheat-like brain. Unlike Dr. Banner, Reed is proficient in almost all fields of science and technology. Some of the inventions he made can even compete with the gods. The smartest person on Earth, the #1 genius in the Marvel world, God Reed. Although these titles haven't appeared on Reed's head yet, as long as he doesn't die early, these titles will fall on his head sooner or later. Therefore, Dr. Banner's refusal will not affect Rog's next plan, and it won't even affect his mood. Men were creatures who would forget their old love once they had a new one. Dr. Banner is Rog's old love, and Reed is his new love. After Hinata put most of her energy into the androids project, the progress of the project improved significantly. Especially after obtaining the Illusion Visions Calculation Matrix data and the Cradle of Regeneration's engineering data, the difficulties in the project were solved one after another. Rog didn't disturb Hinata for too long. After roughly understanding the progress of the android project, he went to his exclusive Naruto training room. Because he only had a month's time, he didn't plan to continue improving his bloodline and immortal body. His purpose this time was very simple, that is, to completely master the third form of Susanoo, that is, the form with black Tengu armor. The third form of Susanoo is also the final form mastered by Itachi. Compared to the second form, which had flesh and meridians, the third form, which had the black Tengu armor, not only had its defense greatly increased, it could also use more weapons. For example, Totsuka sword, Yata no Kagami, Kagami sword, and so on. Rog has always been curious about whether he, who has a similar Mangekyo pattern to Itachi, can awaken Totsuka sword and Yata no Kagami like Itachi? As long as the target is stabbed, the target can be sealed forever, in the dreamlike world of Genjutsu. Yata no Kagami can change its attributes according to the attribute of the attack, reflecting or defending all attacks. As long as one of them can be awakened, the strength of Rog's Susanoo will skyrocket. If he can awaken 2 at the same time, his Susanoo will be almost invincible like Itachi's Susanoo. Note 1. Although in this world the so-called forever and everything of Totsuka sword and Yata no Kagami is unlikely to become a reality. But even if it's not so absolute, it's enough to make his Susanoo's strength qualitatively improve. Coming to the exclusive training room, Rog didn't hesitate and directly opened his Sharingan and began to practice the third form of Susanoo. A month passed in a flash, and when Hinata projected the message from Doom, Rog left Konoha Hidden Village and returned to Earth. After returning to Konoha's headquarters, he didn't stay at the headquarters for too long. He opened the portal to Doom's castle and came to the meeting room where he met with Doom last time. You're a little different? Although Doom didn't know what Rog had done in the past month, he could clearly feel the obvious change in Rog's aura. I went to make some preparations to face Mephisto. Rog gave a simple answer. He didn't need to explain his training to Doom. Doom was just his client, and the relationship between them wasn't good enough to reveal details to each other. This is my latest plan, you can take a look at it first. The way to go to hell is also on it, but I believe you have your own way to go there. After saying that, Doom pointed to the document that had been placed in front of Rog for a long time. Rog opened the document and looked at the plan that Doom came up with after detailed research. The theme of the plan was similar to what he said before. He went to hell with Doom to face Mephisto, and then Doom sacrificed him to Mephisto for Cynthia. With Doom's understanding of his mother, Cynthia, he knew that Cynthia would definitely refuse him to help her regain her freedom in this way. Although when Cynthia died, Doom was still very young. But he knew that his mother, Cynthia, was a gentle angel. As long as Cynthia refused the freedom that Doom sacrificed Rog for, then Cynthia's soul would be redeemed and fly to heaven, thus escaping from Mephisto's clutches. When the soul is redeemed, it can fly to heaven. Most of the items in the dungeon had been removed. In the dungeon, which was the size of a football field, there was only a circular door made of metal and those densely packed lines that covered the entire ground like a spider web. This portal will close after it opens and reopen after 10 seconds. I've calculated the flow of time between hell and earth. This time is enough for us to finish everything in hell. If we can't finish it, we'll probably be dead in hell already. The last time Rog went to hell with Ghost Rider Johnny, he didn't pay special attention to the flow of time between the hell dimension and earth. They hadn't stayed in hell for long, so they didn't feel anything when they returned to earth. But Doom was different. Apart from being a mage, he was also a scientist who was very sensitive to data. The details that Rog and Ghost Rider Johnny hadn't noticed were important for him to figure out. As long as you're sure there's no problem. We're not in a hurry anyway. Rog stood a meter behind Doom and watched him operate this hell portal that was a combination of technology and magic. Ghost Rider's Hellfire portal was more convenient. He could just drive the ghost motorcycle in, and there was no need to prepare so many things. Although that was what he thought, Rog knew that Ghost Rider's ability to freely travel to hell wasn't something that could be found everywhere. In the field of magic, this kind of teleportation had a special term: dimensional teleportation. Chapter 466. Dimensional teleportation was different from ordinary teleportation. It was a teleportation that directly crossed worlds. Although dimensional teleportation did not necessarily require more energy than ordinary teleportation, it was definitely several levels more difficult than ordinary teleportation. In order to perform dimensional teleportation, the first problem to deal with was how to break the world wall between the two worlds. The world wall was an invisible and untouchable existence. Not to mention breaking it, even sensing it was not an easy task. Rog stood quietly behind Doom and watched him operate the teleportation device that he could not understand at all. After Doom set all the data, this extraordinary-looking teleportation portal emitted a lava-like red light. As the red light lit up, a glass-like red light curtain appeared in the middle of the teleportation portal. On the other side of the light curtain was a dry yellow desert. Let's go. After activating the teleportation portal, Doom did not look back. He walked straight into the portal and arrived at hell, which was completely different from Earth. After Doom entered the portal, Rog activated the infinite mode that he had developed and followed him in. Hell was not a place where the living should come. Everything here did not welcome the living, such as the poisonous air and the will of hell. When Rog also entered hell, the red teleportation portal behind him immediately closed and disappeared as if it had never appeared. Just like how Rog had added infinite mode to himself, Doom had also added a magic effect that Rog could not understand, giving him the right to move freely in hell. After arriving at this hell that was like a death planet, Rog and Doom did not speak and quietly adjusted their state. They were not rookies who had gone to hell for the first time, so they both knew that they did not need to look for Mephistos at all. As they had expected, not long after they arrived in hell, they saw their old friend, the Lord of Hell Mephistos. At this moment, Mephistos did not reveal his demon true body, but maintained the demeanor of an old British noble that Rog had seen before. He was wearing a slim black classical suit, meticulously groomed silver-white hair, and a black cane inlaid with a silver skull. Looking at Mephistos, who looked like a British aristocrat, Dum frowned slightly. He had fought Mephisto many times, but he had never seen Mephisto in a human form. In the past, Mephistos had shown him the typical image of a demon with red skin, curved horns and bat wings. I didn't expect that we would meet in hell so soon. I thought that you would only appear at the last moment. Although 10 years is only equivalent to sleeping for a demon, I'm still gratified to be able to see you so soon. Mephistos glanced at Dum, then turned his gaze to Rog. To him, Rog and Doom were toys that could make him happy. The only difference was that Rog's toy was slightly more expensive, while Doom's was slightly more ordinary. Of course, this did not mean that Doom was much weaker than Rog. It was just that according to Mephistos' standards, Rog's soul was an extremely rare limited edition, or even the only one that had gone out of print. I said that I would definitely fulfill my promise. Don't underestimate a ninja's promise. Although this was hell, Mephisto's home ground, Rog's mind was as calm as ever. Mephisto's was indeed very powerful, but it wasn't as if he couldn't fight back at all. Furthermore, he had Professor Doom by his side. Good. Very good. Mephisto said with great relief as he looked at Rog with even more admiration. He originally thought that Rog planned to continue cultivating for 10 years before coming to meet him in hell. However, Rog's actions once again exceeded his expectations. Mephisto's liked people who were unpredictable. This would make him feel the small surprises in life. When everything was under control, life would become especially boring. Why did Mephisto's, a mighty lord of hell, always like to tempt ignorant ordinary people on earth? It was because he wanted his life to not be so boring. Seeing those souls struggle in pain and regret in his hands would give him a rare sense of satisfaction. Mephisto's, let's start this year's bet. Doom did not wait for Rog and Mephisto's to continue talking and directly said to Mephisto's, "This year's bet? No problem. I don't mind having a small appetizer before I want to eat the delicacies." As soon as he finished speaking, Mephisto's aura became completely different. If the previous Mephisto's more or less gave off a friendly and amiable feeling, then the current him was like a high and mighty king who ruled over all things. In fact, in hell, Mephisto's was indeed a high and mighty king. However, the Rog and Doom in front of him now were not the demons of hell who would tremble when they saw him and choose to submit from the bottom of their hearts. Mephisto's displayed his aura as a lord of hell, but he did not change his human appearance. He still maintained the appearance of an old British noble. "Come, let me see what kind of abilities you have after joining forces." Whether it was Rog or Doom, Mephisto's was no stranger to them. Mephisto's didn't know their strength 100%, but he knew it very well. As soon as Mephisto's finished speaking, a strong holy aura erupted from Doom's body, making him look like an angel who had descended from heaven. Doom had many spells, but what he was using now was not the magic he had mastered, but the ability of the fragment of the true cross on his armor. Golden light instantly enveloped Doom's entire body, making him look extremely holy. Then, a laser-like holy beam of light descended from the sky and arrived in front of Mephisto's like lightning. Although Mephisto's was not an undead creature, the holy energy provided by the fragment of the true cross could still restrain his power of hell to a certain extent. Heaven was the nemesis of hell. The holy energy of heaven was also one of the energies that could restrain the power of hell the most. Doom had fought with Mephisto's more than 10 times. Of course he would not overlook this. When Doom summoned the holy beam of light to attack Mephisto's, Rog did not hesitate and directly summoned the Kusanagi no Tsurugi sword. The moment the silver-white Kusanagi no Tsurugi sword appeared in his right hand out of thin air, his figure also disappeared. Byakugan open. Lightning release chakra mode. Unlimited mode could only give Rog the ability to move safely in all kinds of environments. It was not a battle-type ninjutsu. So the moment he attacked Mephisto's, Rog gave himself the first layer of battle-specific buffs. The moment Rog disappeared like lightning, the holy beam of light summoned by Doom also hit Mephisto's, completely devouring the thin and weak Mephisto's. To be precise, it devoured the afterimage left behind by Mephisto's. Facing the attack of the holy beam of light, Mephisto's did not use any magic or energy moves. He dodged the holy beam of light with just his physical strength and left behind an afterimage. As a lord of hell, Mephisto's physical strength could not be weak. He rarely used melee combat, not because he didn't know how, but because there was no need. Rog and Doom were not surprised that Mephisto's could easily dodge the attack of the holy beam of light. If Mephisto's could not even dodge such an attack, he would not be qualified to be a lord of hell. Mephisto's, who had dodged the holy beam of light, appeared more than 10 meters behind him again. At the same time, Rog, who had entered lightning release chakra mode, also appeared in front of him. Lightning release, Thousand Birds Blade. In just an instant, the silver-white Kusanagi no Tsurugi sword was wrapped with light blue lightning as it stabbed directly at Mephisto's chest. Although Mephisto's was a lord of hell, he also had a fatal weakness like the other demons of hell: his heart core. Through the Byakugan, Rog saw the fist-sized heart core in Mephisto's chest that looked like a solidified red sun. Clang. Unlike the previous battle, Mephisto's did not use an energy barrier to block Rog's attack this time. Instead, he raised the black scepter in his hand. The black scepter that looked like it was made of ordinary wood blocked the Kusanagi no Tsurugi sword with great precision, and the crisp sound of metal clashing against metal could be heard. Before Rog could retract his Kusanagi no Tsurugi sword, Mephistos held the tip of the scepter in his hand and turned it into a sharp sword, stabbing at Rog repeatedly. Clang, 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 clang. At this moment, Mephistos displayed exquisite swordsmanship. Just with one stab after another, he forced Rog to retreat continuously. As expected of a Lord of Hell, he had a way. Rog had no intention of competing with Mephistos in swordsmanship, so he immediately retreated. However, the moment he pulled away, Mephistos stuck close to him like a shadow. Before the Earthlings even had civilization, the demons were already masters of close combat. Playing with swords in front of me, aren't you looking down on the demons of hell too much? The swordsmanship that Mephistos displayed now was not inferior to that of the goddess of death, Hela. Although his swordsmanship was only fast, accurate and ruthless, in his hands, even the simplest of moves could turn into a storm of death that could take away one's life. Holy Halo. Holy Oath. Just as Rog was being forced back by Mephistos, Dum cast 2 more holy spells in the distance. Rog, who was enveloped in lightning release chakra, suddenly shone with a golden light that was like the sun. At the same time, the Kusanagi no Tsurugi sword in his hand was wrapped in holy flames that contained holy energy. Holy Halo gave Rog the holy energy to resist the power of hell, increasing his strength and speed for a short period of time. Holy Oath gave the Kusanagi no Tsurugi sword in his hand the ability to deal holy damage. Professor of Destruction Dum became a reliable healer, giving Rog 2 holy buffs. Chapter 467. Reality proved that although Professor Doom did not have a good reputation in the outside world, he would be a very good team member when working together. The timing of the 2 holy spells, Holy Halo and Holy Oath, could be said to be perfect. If not for the fact that this was Doom's first time fighting together, Rog would have suspected that he had specially trained with Doom in this kind of tactic. The sudden burst of holy energy from Rog's body instantly disrupted Mephistos' attack rhythm, giving him an almost negligible amount of time to catch his breath. To ordinary people, Mephistos' short delay of a few tenths of a second wasn't an opportunity at all. However, to people like Rog or Hela who were extremely proficient in close-range combat, this delay was enough to turn the tide of the battle. Mephistos' black cane brushed past Rog's face, almost leaving a scar on his handsome face. Rog did not waste the opportunity that Doom had created. The Kusanagi no Tsurugi sword wrapped in light blue lightning and golden holy flames stabbed out at a speed that exceeded the limits of what the naked eye could see. This time Rog did not stab at Mephistos' heart core in his chest. Instead he stabbed at his right eye. Even if Mephisto was a lord of hell, as long as he was stabbed by this sword, he would definitely have a temporary loss of vision. This had nothing to do with whether Mephisto was a lord of hell or not. It was purely determined by his form. If Rog did not have Holy Halo and Holy Oath, Mephisto would not care about this sword at all. Although the Kusanagi no Tsurugi sword was fast, he could completely create an energy barrier before it stabbed him and block Rog's sword. However, Mephisto did not dare to do so now. He could ignore Rog's chakra, but he did not dare to underestimate the holy energy of the true cross fragment. Retreat. Retreat quickly. Mephisto, who had just mocked Rog for overestimating himself and daring to use swordsmanship in front of him, was now forced back by Rog's sword. Although Logue didn't say anything harsh to Mephisto, he proved it to Mephisto with his actions. Don't act tough just because you're older. There were many examples of people who looked down on the Earth civilization and were defeated by the Earthlings in the end. Mephistos chose to retreat, but Rog wouldn't let him off so easily. A few seconds ago, Mephisto was still chasing after Rog. But now the situation was reversed. Dang 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 dang. Previously Mephisto had used Rog as a practice target. Now it was Rog's turn to return the favor. Just like Mephisto's, who only pursued speed, accuracy and ruthlessness with his sword, Rog's attack also followed these 3 points. Swords were lethal weapons and swordsmanship was the art of killing. Note 1. The art of killing did not need to be fancy. Just as Rog was about to leave the mark of an earthling on Mephisto's body in one go, the holy energy in his body disappeared. The duration of the Holy Halo and the Holy Oath had ended. The sudden disappearance of the buff inevitably made his movements a little incoherent. The experienced Mephisto naturally wouldn't miss such an opportunity. However, just as he was about to counterattack, Rog opened his mouth silently. Old man, you've been tricked. With Mephisto's ability, reading lips wasn't a problem at all. But before he could react, a holy light that seemed to have descended from heaven completely enveloped the two of them. Holy purification. It was true that Rog and Doom had never worked together before, but they were both existences with rich combat experience. Even if they hadn't rehearsed or worked together before, as long as they had seen the same battle plan, they would be able to cooperate tacitly. Holy Halo, Holy Oath, Holy Purification. These holy spells were all in the plan that Doom had shown Rog. In order to regain the freedom of Cynthia's soul, Doom generously revealed the spells he had mastered to Rog. Although the spells recorded in the plan couldn't be all of Doom's spells. However, as long as he knew the effects of these spells, Rog would be able to determine which spell Doom would cast at which time. This had nothing to do with whether the two of them were familiar with each other or not. It was purely because they had the same level of combat thinking. Simply put, this was like two kings being matched against the same passerby. They had indeed never worked together before, but under the premise of knowing what abilities the other party had, they could easily cooperate exquisitely. In a one-on-one situation, they were indeed no match for Mephisto. Although the humans on Earth were far inferior to the demons in Hell, humans had an advantage that demons could never have. Humans were creatures that would help and support each other. A single person's strength might be very insignificant, but when one human after another was added together, it was enough to change the world. Man could conquer nature. Because humans were weak, they learned to work together. Because humans were weak, they learned to use the laws of nature and borrow the power of the world itself. Because humans were weak, they learned to be humble and learn, and explore the truth of the world bit by bit. So never, ever underestimate humans. The holy light that was like the descent of heaven dispelled the power of hell within a few hundred meters. This hellish place filled with destruction and chaos showed a warmth and light that had never appeared before. When the holy light dissipated, Rog and Mephisto, who were at the center of the holy purification, disappeared. The power of holy purification was very strong, enough to deal a fatal blow to the undead and demons. But it also depended on who the opponent was. As a lord of hell, the holy purification that Doom used the true cross fragment to cast could indeed make him suffer a small loss, but it was far from enough to seriously injure him. However, Rog and Doom didn't expect the holy purification to completely deal with the Lord of Hell. Being able to make Mephisto suffer a small loss was already a very good result. The defense towers had to be pushed down one by one, and the troops had to be pushed down in waves. In order to destroy the enemy's crystal, they had to build up their own advantage bit by bit. What Rog and Doom were doing now was to increase their advantage bit by bit. This advantage might not be obvious now, but as long as they continued to accumulate, they would be able to destroy this crystal named Mephisto sooner or later. After the holy purification, Rog's figure appeared 2 to 3 meters in front of Doom, while Mephisto's figure appeared more than 100 meters away. After being hit by the holy purification on the spot, even Mephisto was left with many marks. His classic black suit had obvious holes in it, and his meticulous silver hair had also become messy. Good. Very good. Both of you are very good. Although Mephisto's voice wasn't loud, Rog and Doom could clearly hear the anger in his voice. Before they could say anything, Mephisto tore off his suit, revealing his strong muscles that didn't match his image of an old man. Under Rog and Doom's gaze, Mephisto's skin turned dark red, and the human appearance that he maintained also changed. 2 huge curved horns grew out of his forehead, his human hands turned into monster-like claws, and a pair of huge red bat wings surged out of his back. In less than a second or two, Mephisto turned into the classic demon image in the legends. Although this red demon image looked like Mephisto's true demon body, Rog knew that this wasn't Mephisto's true appearance. Mephisto's true appearance was unknown, and all the appearances he displayed were only changes he made according to his needs. Note 2. However, from the way Mephisto transformed from a human into a demon, he should be angry. Otherwise, he could have continued to maintain his human appearance and the mentality that this was just a small game. After Mephisto transformed into a demon, Rog threw the Kusanagi sword back into the psychic scroll and deactivated the lightning escape chakra mode. Since Mephisto was starting to get angry, he naturally had to give himself a stronger buff. 8 inner hidden gates, 6th gate, Gate of View open. Before the battle with Ronan on planet Sokka, Rog had already grasped the 6th gate, Gate of View. It was just that Ronan's strength was too weak. He couldn't even survive the 5th gate, Gate of Stop, causing the 6th gate, Gate of View, to lose the opportunity to appear. Although Mephisto didn't know what kind of existence the 8 inner hidden gates were, he could clearly sense Rog's greatly increased chakra and physical strength. Is he planning to continue fighting me in close combat? Mephisto's had changed his human form to that of a demon, with the intention of continuing to fight Rog in close combat. But what he didn't expect was that after seeing his demon appearance, Rog actually used a move that greatly increased his physical strength. Interesting. Interesting. Looking at Rog, who was emitting a green glow, Mephisto suddenly laughed. Under normal circumstances, people would choose to attack their opponent's weakness with their strengths. This was also the most suitable tactic in a battle. But at this moment, Rog was doing the opposite. Mephisto transformed into a demon that was better at close combat, and he activated the 8 inner hidden gates that could greatly increase his close combat ability. Don't you want to fight in close combat? I'll give you the chance. Rog's tit-for-tat and unyielding approach perfectly matched Mephisto's preferences. Looking at Rog, Mephisto thought of his disappointing descendants. Why don't my descendants have such a personality? They only know how to scheme against each other all day and play small tricks that can't be shown in public. They're simply embarrassing me, Mephisto. If he had a descendant with Rog's personality, why would he stay in hell and work so hard at his age? Be my son. Just as Rog and Doom were waiting for Mephisto's revenge attack, Mephisto suddenly said something that confused them. Chapter 468. Was this guy crazy? Or did he go to the wrong set? Mephisto's words made Rog and Doom look puzzled. However, after hearing this sentence, the two of them thought of completely different things. Doom had interacted with Mephisto many times, but he had never seen Mephisto like this. The current Mephisto didn't have the attitude of a lord of hell at all. Instead, he looked like an old human man anxiously looking for an heir. If he wasn't very sure that Rog was a native of Earth and a disciple of the Ancient One, Doom would have suspected that Rog really had some unspeakable relationship with Mephisto. Although Rog didn't think as much as Doom, Mephisto's words reminded him of a great man who claimed to be a remnant of the old era. I am a remnant of the old era, and the new era doesn't have a ship to carry me. Note 1. Until today, Rog could still clearly remember how excited he was when he heard this sentence. A man's heroic life should come to an end in such a spectacular way. Therefore, when he heard Mephisto's words, he couldn't help but be distracted, and his thoughts involuntarily flew to the sea that carried the dreams of countless people. You should leave this kind of qualification to others. I can't afford it. Rog directly rejected Mephisto's suggestion. Even if his brain had been fried by the chakra of the 8 gates, there was no way he would agree to Mephisto's suggestion. Wasn't it good to be a human? It's okay, I'll make you slowly agree. As long as you live in hell for a while, you'll find that hell isn't as bad as you think. Mephisto didn't care about Rog's rejection. He would have been surprised if Rog had agreed immediately. Moreover, Rog's rejection made Mephisto admire him even more. Perhaps it was his imagination, but Rog felt that there was something wrong with the way Mephisto looked at him. He remembered that he had seen this kind of gaze from a certain group of people with special sexual orientations. After shaking his head to dispel these strange thoughts, Rog took a deep breath and took the initiative to attack Mephisto's in the distance. He had to complete the mission as soon as possible, then leave hell and stay away from that old pervert. Rog, whose body was emitting green light, disappeared again. In the next second he arrived in front of Mephisto, who had become more than 2 meters tall. Shadow Dance Leaf. Rog, who appeared in front of Mephisto in a flash, raised his right leg and kicked Mephisto's chin. Rog, who had opened the 6th gate of view, erupted with a speed that shocked even Mephisto. However, just as his right foot was about to land on Mephisto's chin, the giant bat wings on Mephisto's back flapped gently, and he flew out of Lin Li's attack range. Although Mephisto had never seen the 8 inner hidden gates before, he knew one thing very well, and that was that the 8 inner hidden gates was definitely not simple. Not to mention the attack power of the 8 inner hidden gates, just the fact that it could increase Rog's chakra was enough to make Mephisto extremely vigilant. The last time they fought, Mephisto discovered that Rog's body had energy that far exceeded that of an earthling. At this moment, Rog's chakra, which was already very large, became even more astonishing under the amplification of the 8 inner hidden gates. However, this was normal. After all, opening the 8 inner hidden gates was equivalent to burning one's life force. Whether it was burning one's life force, soul, or anything else, it could increase the caster's strength by a terrifying amount. There were many such methods in the human world, and there were also many in hell. Mephisto's bat wings flapped gently, and he flew dozens of meters into the air. He looked down at Rog, who was on the ground. However, in the next second, Rog disappeared from the ground again. Shadow Dancing Leaf was Lotus Flower's starting move. It was to kick the enemy into the air, so he deliberately targeted the enemy's chin. Although Logue's Shadow Dancing Leaf didn't hit Mephisto, Mephisto flew up on its own and completed the effect he wanted to cast on it. Inner Lotus. Just as Mephisto was about to sense Rog's whereabouts, Rog's voice sounded behind him. After Shadow Dancing Leaf, he could follow up with Outer Lotus and Inner Lotus. Rog had originally planned to use Outer Lotus to test the power of Mephisto's demon form. However, after Mephisto said "Be my son," and revealed a look that gave him goosebumps, he decisively gave up on Outer Lotus. Outer Lotus needed to tie Mephisto up tightly with bandages or something else and then spin him into the ground. At this moment, Rog didn't want to have such intimate contact with Mephisto. Therefore, Inner Lotus, who didn't need to be hugged by the opponent, became a more suitable choice. The moment the voice sounded, Rog's right fist hit Mephisto's back, sending him flying to the ground. However, the moment Mephisto was sent flying, Rog, who was originally behind Mephisto, arrived in front of him and kicked him in the chest with his right foot. Thus, Mephisto, who was originally flying toward the ground, flew backward into the sky. Mephisto's combat skills and reaction speed were extremely outstanding, but unfortunately he had encountered Rog, who had cheated. After hitting Mephisto twice in a row, Rog arrived beside Mephisto again. Then it was another heavy punch. Mephisto, a mighty lord of hell, was sent flying by Rog like a volleyball. Bang 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 bang. Muffled sounds of strikes rang out continuously, as if a battle song that belonged to Log was being played. Although Dum really wanted to help Rog add a few holy attribute enhancement spells, he helplessly discovered that he couldn't keep up with Rog's speed at all. Rog's Inner Lotus at this moment proved what it meant to be a high-speed attack that the enemy couldn't even touch. Even an existence like the Lord of Hell, Mephisto, couldn't stop Rog's high-speed attacks, and could only passively choose to take the beating. Although Mephisto looked a little beaten up now, in fact, the damage that Inner Lotus had done to him was more in terms of image than physical body. This was the first time in Mephisto's long life that he was being hit like a volleyball. After punching and kicking Mephisto dozens of times in the air at a speed that was beyond what the naked eye could capture, Rog finally made the final blow to end Inner Lotus. Boom. Mephisto, who had been hit in the chest by Rog's right fist, crashed into the ground like a meteor, creating a huge crater that was more than 10 meters wide. The thick ground outside the crater also cracked like a spider web from Mephisto's impact, spreading dozens of meters around the crater. After using Inner Lotus ultimate skill, Rog also stopped flying in the air, and slowly landed on the ground. When Rog landed on the ground, Dum finally had the chance to throw out the holy spell that he had prepared long ago. Light Armor. An armor completely made of golden light appeared on Rog's body, making him look like a heavenly soldier from heaven. At the same time, the physical strength that he had just used to cast Inner Lotus quickly recovered, and all the fatigue and discomfort in his body were instantly dispelled. More importantly, the light armor added the holy attribute to his attacks that was most effective against hell demons. As the light armor appeared, Mephisto, who had been beaten up by Inner Lotus, also flew out of the crater. Inner Lotus, that's a pretty good move. But it's a pity that your attack just now didn't have any holy attribute. As soon as he finished speaking, the demonic Mephisto moved his body in front of Rog and Dum. With a series of crackling sounds, Mephisto's demonic form returned to its original state, and the wounds from Inner Lotus attack completely disappeared. It's okay as long as I can beat you up. Rog didn't expect Inner Lotus to seriously injure Mephisto. Li Lianhua was just a cover. His real goal had been achieved long before Li Lianhua ended. Is that so? Then I'll show you the battle stance of a demon. Mephisto, who was flying in the air, disappeared instantly and appeared in front of Rog in a flash. Seeing Mephisto suddenly appear, Rog's expression didn't change and he didn't even move. Just as Mephisto's sharp and huge right claw was about to grab him, Rog finally moved. Flying Thor. Mephisto's right claw slashed across where Rog had been standing, and Rog appeared behind Mephisto at the same time. Holy Super Jade Rasengan. Before Mephisto could react, a Super Jade Rasengan wrapped in holy power like the sun, struck him hard on the back. Boom. The Super Jade Rasengan that contained holy attributes exploded, and Mephisto, who was caught off guard, was sent flying. Flying Thor. This was Rog's real goal in using Inner Lotus to attack Mephisto. His goal had never been to use Inner Lotus to seriously injure Mephisto, but to use Inner Lotus attack to conceal the existence of the Flying Thor. It turned out that Mephisto had indeed been deceived by Inner Lotus attack. He didn't notice the existence of the Flying Thor at all. With Mephisto's ability, as long as he discovered the existence of the Flying Thor, it wouldn't be difficult for him to disperse the Thor. But he didn't do that at all. He only recovered from the injuries caused by Inner Lotus attack, and completely ignored the seemingly inconspicuous but even more fatal flying Thor. Mephisto was considered experienced and knowledgeable, but the flying Thor that Rog used just now was completely beyond his imagination. He didn't even notice how Rog had appeared behind him. Chapter 469. The power of the Okodama Rasengan wasn't weak to begin with. Coupled with the holy power that countered demons, Rog's holy Okodama Rasengan dealt the highest damage since the start of the battle. Mephisto's flew backward for more than 100 meters before finally stopping. He used his body to draw a trench dozens of meters long on the ground. Looking at Mephisto's messy back and the fact that he was missing a bat wing, Rog was slightly surprised. He didn't expect the holy Okodama Rasengan that he suddenly came up with to be so powerful. The power of the holy power was far more effective against demons than he had imagined. Being sent flying by Rog again, and being sent flying by the Okodama Rasengan that contained holy power, made Mephisto's, who was already a little impatient, completely change his expression. He did admire Rog, but he couldn't tolerate Rog provoking him again and again. Although the injury on Mephisto's back was serious, it wasn't serious enough to seriously injure him. A visible black energy suddenly surged out of Mephisto's body. With the appearance of the black energy, the injury on his back quickly healed. The bat wing that had fallen to an unknown place had also grown back. Rapid regeneration. It only took a second or two for Mephisto's to recover completely, as if nothing had happened. The regenerative ability of demons was astonishing to begin with, not to mention that Mephisto's wasn't an ordinary demon. The regenerative ability of a Lord of Hell wasn't something that trash demons could compare to. When the injury on his back was completely healed, Mephisto slowly turned around and looked at Rog in the distance with a solemn expression. Although he really wanted Rog to be his son, his most outstanding and powerful descendant. But he also knew that Rog wasn't the kind of existence to be obedient. In the world of demons, there was a very simple way to make your subordinates and descendants obedient, and that was to use your fist to tell the other party who was the boss. The fist was the truth. This was the simple, efficient and primitive values of Hell's demons. Although Rog wasn't a demon from Hell, Mephisto's didn't mind letting him understand in advance what a filial son in Hell was. After healing his injuries again, Mephisto's didn't immediately attack Rog. Instead, he silently checked his body. Although it was his first time seeing the flying Thor, he immediately realized something. When Rog suddenly appeared behind him, he sensed a spatial fluctuation that was so weak that it was almost negligible. To others, this weak spatial fluctuation was as if it didn't exist. But to Mephisto's, although it was weak, it wasn't enough to completely hide from his senses. Just as Mephisto's tried to check his body, Mephisto's, the holy armor, attacked Mephisto's attack. It hadn't been easy for Log to secretly leave a few flying lightning god spells on Mephisto's body. There was no way he was going to let Mephisto dispel them. The flying Thor. With a thought, Rog appeared in front of Mephisto again, and punched at Mephisto with both fists at the same time. Morning Peacock. This was a powerful move that could only be used after opening the sixth gate, the Gate of View. In an instant, hundreds and thousands of fist shadows appeared in front of Mephisto's. Rog wasn't the thousand Hangguanin. Of course he didn't have 1,000 fists. These countless fist shadows that filled the sky were purely visual afterimages caused by the speed of his punches being too fast. He infused the super speed and super attack power of the sixth gate, the Gate of View, into his fists and used countless fists to hit the enemy with a super powerful physical technique. This was Morning Peacock. And it was different from the Morning Peacock used under normal circumstances. Rog's Morning Peacock not only produced flames because of its speed, but it also had the holy power of the holy armor, turning these orange-red flames into golden holy flames. Mephisto's was indeed very strong, but in front of Rog's Morning Peacock, he could only passively defend. It wasn't that he didn't want to retreat, but that Rog didn't give him any chance to retreat at all. Morning Peacock was a rapid, continuous attack that didn't give the enemy any time to breathe. If it was so easy to dodge Morning Peacock's attack, it wouldn't be qualified to be a move that could only be used after opening the sixth gate, the Gate of View. The greater the price paid, the more power one would gain. Any move or method that could increase the strength of the caster followed this simple and unadorned principle. Mephisto's, who had already tasted the power of the lotus flower and the sacred Super Kodama Rasengan with his body, didn't hesitate. He immediately mobilized the seemingly endless magic power in his body and instantly constructed several layers of energy barriers in front of him. Layer after layer of blood red or dark energy barriers appeared in front of Mephisto's, forming a line of defense between him and Rog. As soon as Mephisto's energy barriers appeared, the golden flames scattered from Rog's fists occupied his entire vision, turning the sky in front of him golden. It was as bright as the sunrise, as dazzling as the tail feathers of a peacock. Morning Peacock. It lived up to its name. The golden holy flames, along with Rog's fists, kept hitting Mephisto's energy barriers. Bang, bang, bang. Under Morning Peacock's attack, the energy barriers with astonishing defensive power only lasted for a short 1 or 2 seconds before they were completely shattered. Rog's fists and the remaining holy flames poured down on Mephisto's body like bullets from a Gatling gun. This violent attack, with its visual effects, lasted for a full 5 seconds before it ended. Rog's last punch landed heavily on Mephisto's demon head, directly shattering part of it. After Rog ended Morning Peacock, Doom finally had time to size up Mephisto's appearance from afar. Mephisto's body, which had just recovered, was once again riddled with injuries. Being hit by the sacred Super Kodama Rasengan only left Mephisto's back in a mess and destroyed one of his bat wings. After being attacked by Morning Peacock, Mephisto's not only lost all of his bat wings, but even the curved horn on his head was completely broken. What was even more shocking was that there were visible holes of different sizes on Mephisto's body. This time, Mephisto's wasn't sent flying, but stopped less than 5 meters away from Rog. "Now, do you still think you can subdue me?" Rog said as he walked toward the wounded Mephisto's, his right hand once again condensing the Rasengan containing holy power. Chapter 470. Just as Rog condensed the sacred Rasengan and walked towards Mephisto, Dr. Doom, who had been watching the battle from behind for a long time, made his move again. Doom raised his empty right hand as if holding an invisible whip, and threw it directly in Rog's direction. The moment Doom's right hand fell, a chain completely condensed from golden light instantly appeared and struck Rog like lightning. Chains of God. The chains of God condensed from golden light instantly crossed a distance of hundreds of meters and appeared behind Rog in a flash. Then it tied him up firmly. Doom directly attacked Rog. Although the chains of God, which contained the divine power of heaven, were only 2 or 3 centimeters thick, the divine power on the chain displayed an extremely terrifying binding ability. The appearance of the chains of God stopped Rog from moving forward and bound him in place. Before Rog could turn around, Doom made his move again. Holy Sealing Sword. Doom's empty left hand was raised high, and as if he was swinging a sword, he swung it down from top to bottom. With the swing of Doom's left hand, 6 two-handed giant swords condensed from divine power fell from the sky like meteors and landed in front of Rog, piercing through his body. These 6 holy sealing swords stabbed into Rog's body from 6 different angles. Not only did they nail him in place, but they also sealed the flow of his chakra in an overbearing manner. In the blink of an eye, the green light shining on Rog's body disappeared, and the Hashiman Tanku was forcibly closed. Even the sacred Rasengan condensed in his right hand burst silently like a bubble. Was this an internal strife? Mephisto, who was riddled with scars, did not understand what was going on for a while. After being beaten up by Rog's Morning Peacock, which contained divine power, he planned to completely give up on close combat with Rog. However, before he could change his form again, he saw the scene of internal strife. "Mephisto, let's make a deal." Holding the chain of gods in his right hand, Dermu flew to a dozen meters behind Rog and spoke to Mephisto condescendingly. "Dumb, what do you mean by this?" Before Mephisto could say anything, Rog questioned Doom angrily. "That's what I mean now." Dumb did not mind Rog's dissatisfaction, and gently tugged at the chains of God in his hand. The second Doom pulled on the chains of God, the chains on Rog's body tightened around him like a python trying to strangle its prey. "Dumb, you better pray that I never return to Earth. Otherwise I'll definitely wipe out your Ladovinia." Although Rog's voice was not loud, Doom and Mephisto could clearly feel the murderous intent that he was emitting. "I never pray." As soon as he said that, the chains of God wrapped around Rog's body extended to his head and completely tied him up like a bandage wrapped around a mummy. Although Mephisto did not know what Dumb was planning, he could tell that Dumb and Rog, who were originally in the same team, had completely fallen out. Or rather, Dumb had unilaterally chosen to betray his teammates. Mephisto first healed the holes and wounds on his body, then looked up at Dumb, who was floating in the air. The mysterious energy in Rog's body had really been sealed. Dumu was being serious. As a demon from hell who had integrated cunningness into his instincts, Mephisto did not let the internal strife in front of him go to his head. He used his own method to sense Rog's current state in detail. The chains of God bound Rog's body, and the holy light sealing sword sealed the energy in his body. What do you want? Mephisto looked up at Dum and asked calmly. My mother's soul. Just as Mephisto had expected, Dum gave the answer he already knew. Using Log to exchange for your mother's soul, that's a pretty good deal. As he spoke, Mephisto raised his right hand and summoned an irregular hexagonal prism. In this crystal-like prism, there was a typical image of a woman from Earth. Cynthia's soul. The image in the prism that was like a holographic projection was the soul of Dum's mother, Cynthia. It's a good deal, but why should I believe you? Mephisto said with a smile. At the same time, orange-red hellfire burned in the prism. Ah! The moment the hellfire burned, Cynthia in the prism let out a painful howl. Hearing Cynthia's miserable howl, veins appeared on Dum's right hand that was holding the chains of God. His body exuded a strong killing intent that was not on the same level as Rog's just now. Mephisto. Don't go overboard. Dum suppressed the anger in his heart and said word by word. Overboard? I don't think so. Although he said that, Mephisto still ended the hellfire and let Cynthia escape her torture for the time being. Do you know that souls burned to death by hellfire are not only hated by hell and heaven, but they will also never have the chance to reincarnate? They will only become nutrients for hellfire and experience eternal pain in hellfire. Mephisto played with the prism that imprisoned Cynthia's soul and explained patiently. I know. But I also know that existences killed by divine power will neither appear in hell nor ascend to heaven. Since you like gambling so much, do you dare to bet with me? Let's see if I feel more despair when my mother is killed, or if you feel more pain when you lose Rog's soul forever. As he spoke, the chains of God on Rog's body became brighter and brighter, gradually turning from golden to blazing white. Watch carefully. Rog's soul that you want is about to disappear. As soon as he finished speaking, Dum's right hand that was holding the other end of the chains of God began to exert force. Wait. Just as the chains of God were about to completely turn blazing white, Mephisto spoke. Give me Rog and I'll return your mother to you. Mephisto finally made the decision to make the deal. Cynthia's soul was just one of his many playthings. If not for the fact that Cynthia had a good son like Dum, he would not be so concerned about Cynthia's soul. Okay. Count down from 3 and we'll make the deal. Dum raised his right hand and pointed at the prism in Mephisto's hand with his left. No problem. Because they were in hell, Mephisto was not worried that Dum would play any tricks. Even if Dum had other intentions, he would not be able to leave hell with Cynthia. 3-2. Since Mephisto agreed to the deal, Dum did not hesitate and began to count down. Just as he was about to count down to 1 and throw the chains of God in his hand to Mephisto, Cynthia suddenly spoke in the prism. Don't do this. Cynthia's words directly interrupted the deal between Dum and Mephisto. Shut up. Mephisto snorted unhappily, and made the hellfire appear in the prism again, intending to teach Cynthia a small lesson. Let her speak. However, before Mephisto could do anything, Dum clenched the chains of God in his hand tightly, and made them shine with a blazing white light. Dum, I'm already very happy to see you grow up. Back then I did something wrong, so I fell into the hands of the devil. I don't want you to walk the same path. If I can obtain my freedom in this way, I'd rather continue to be tortured by this devil for 1,000 years or 10,000 years. Dum, you've been a little angel who brings happiness and joy to others since you were young. I hope you can continue like this and bring happiness and joy to the people of Latvinia. You must become the guardian angel of Latvinia. Cynthia's voice wasn't loud, but Dum heard every word she said clearly. Looking at Dum, who was floating in the air and trying his best to control his trembling body, Cynthia stretched out her arms towards him, as if she wanted to hug her little angel. Dum, Mom, I love you. I'll always love you. Cynthia smiled at Dum, a warm smile that did not fit in with hell appearing on her face. Then Cynthia took the initiative to walk into the hellfire and was completely devoured by it. The hellfire that could bring extreme pain to the soul completely enveloped Cynthia's soul, but it did not bring any pain to Cynthia, unlike usual. At this moment, a faint golden light appeared on Cynthia's body. Cynthia gave up the freedom that Dum had obtained by betraying Rog. She gave up her life to teach Dum the last lesson a mother could teach her son. Cynthia's soul had been redeemed. Looking at the white light that suddenly appeared on Cynthia's body, Mephisto realized that something was wrong. This familiar white light reminded him of a certain existence that he hated the most. Before Mephisto could think of a result, a door formed by white light appeared in the sky above them. This is the door to heaven. Mephisto immediately reacted. However, it was already too late. A warm light that was like the sun shot out from the door to heaven. It was like sunlight that pierced through dark clouds and shone on Mephisto's right hand. Sizzle! Mephisto's right hand that was illuminated by the holy light emitted a sound like roasting meat. Then, under his gaze, his right hand completely collapsed and dissipated. Along with his right hand, the prism that imprisoned Cynthia's soul and the hellfire that devoured Cynthia also dissipated. Under the white light, Cynthia's soul returned to its original size and slowly floated in front of Dum. She reached out her right hand and silently touched the metal mask on Dum's face. Just as Dum tried to hug Cynthia with both hands, Cynthia's soul completely disappeared. Cynthia had ascended to heaven. Chapter 471. The gates of heaven took away Cynthia's soul and ended her fate of being tortured by Mephisto. It also allowed Rog and Doom to complete their set battle goal. However, after Cynthia's soul ascended to heaven, the three people present didn't take any further action. Mephisto didn't do anything because he didn't expect that Cynthia's redemption would actually lead to the gates of heaven. This was hell, the farthest place from heaven. It was the dimension that rejected the power of heaven the most. Cynthia was just an ordinary person who knew a little about magic. She couldn't even be considered a magic apprentice. But it was such an ordinary person who completed her redemption in hell and even led the gates of heaven to hell. This was the first time in Mephisto's long life that such a phenomenon that didn't make sense at all. Mephisto was stunned because of the sudden appearance of the gates of heaven. As for Doom, who was floating in the air, he was so excited that he forgot what to do next. Cynthia's final farewell made Doom, who was known as Professor of Destruction, fall into deep memories. It made him recall the beautiful memories of his life with Cynthia. The only person who was more normal now was Rog, who was tied up like a mummy by the chains of God. Although the seal of the Holy Light Sealing Sword wasn't weak, the fact that it could completely seal the flow of chakra had a lot to do with his tacit cooperation. He and Doom didn't discuss the exact time of the deceit segment. The reason why he was able to prepare in advance before the effect of the Holy Light Sealing Sword took effect was purely because he received the action signal from Doom. The chains of God was the action signal from Doom. From Mephisto's point of view, the chains of God was just a means for Doom to restrain Rog and imprison him on the spot. But in reality, this was just a signal to remind Rog to be prepared in advance. As for the Holy Light Sealing Sword that followed, it was purely a smokescreen for Mephisto. Mephisto's perception was indeed outstanding. But no matter how outstanding his perception was, he couldn't tell if Rog had only sealed the flow of chakra in his body or if the chakra had been sealed by the Holy Light Sealing Sword. According to the plan, after Cynthia's soul ascended to heaven, Doom should immediately remove the restraints on Rog. However, Doom, who was too emotional, temporarily forgot about this matter. Therefore, there was an awkward problem. Rog could indeed remove the seal on his body and let chakra flow again. If necessary, he could even use the Nine Tails' chakra to forcefully break free from the shackles of the chains of God and the Holy Light Sealing Sword. But this way, he would have to give up on the plan to take something from Mephisto and return to the human world, empty-handed. Dum, can you wake up quickly? Your mother has already gone to heaven. Rog silently Doom. Doom, you. Before Doom could recover, Mephisto spoke first. Fool, that's right, we were fooling you. After hearing Mephisto's angry voice, Doom finally regained his senses. Doom released the chains of God in his right hand and removed the Holy Light Sealing Sword on Rog. None of you can leave this place alive. Mephisto was completely enraged. In hell, in the world he ruled, he was actually fooled by two fellows from Earth. To Mephisto's, this was an intolerable humiliation. In an instant the sky changed color. The sky darkened, and in the blink of an eye, it turned from day to night. At the same time, the power of hell that filled every corner of hell boiled like boiling water. Destruction, death, brutality, madness, chaos, and indescribable will silently envelop the entire infernal realm. The will of hell. The sleeping will of hell was forcefully awakened by Mephisto. The moment the will of hell awakened, Rog, who had just broken free from his restraints, and Doom, who was floating in the air, immediately felt a terrifying pressure that they could not resist. The awakened will of hell began to target them, two creatures that did not belong to hell. When the will of hell was in slumber, they could more or less feel the repulsion from hell. But that repulsion was far from comparable to now. When the will of hell was asleep, it was as if they had entered a party that they were not welcome at. Although they would feel a strong sense of incompatibility, they would not be attacked. But it was different now. The will of hell had awakened. They were still in that unwelcome party, but this time, everyone in the party had picked up a weapon and intended to kill the two of them. Being directly suppressed by the will of hell was not a good thing. I'll buy you 10 seconds. I don't care what method you use, you must open the portal. Otherwise we'll become Mephisto's playthings together. After saying that, Rog directly mobilized the hellfire that he had plundered from the Ghost Rider. Using hellfire in front of the will of hell and Mephisto was not a very wise thing to do. But at this time, hellfire was the only power in Rog's hands that could slightly alleviate the suppression of the will of hell. When the orange-red hellfire completely enveloped him, the terrifying suppression brought by the will of hell was alleviated a lot, allowing him to prepare his next means more calmly. Susanoo. Without any hesitation, Rog switched the Byakugan to the Mangekyo Sharingan, and at the same time activated the Susanoo that he had been training for a month. The more than 10 meters tall Susanoo quickly took shape, completely enveloping him in doom. Unlike the previous Susanoo, what Rog is using now is the third form of the Black Tengu armor, which has a significant increase in defensive power. However, the most eye-catching thing is not the Black Tengu armor on the Susanoo's body, but the round shield in the Susanoo's left hand, which is branded with Magatama and spiral patterns, like a burning flame, and the gourd in the right hand. Yata no Kagami Tatsuka sword. After cultivating the Susanoo to the third form, Rog's Susanoo has the same Yata mirror and Tatsuka sword as Uchiha Itachi. The system gave Rog the Mangekyo rune that is very similar to Uchiha Itachi's, and also gave him the Yata mirror and Tatsuka sword that Uchiha Itachi once had. To be precise, it is a temporary Yata mirror and Tatsuka sword. Although there is a limit to the number of uses, after knowing that his Susanoo also has Yata mirror and Tatsuka sword, Rog no longer has any complaints about his Mangekyo rune. Isn't it just a high imitation of Uchiha Itachi's Mangekyo rune? It doesn't matter, this is a trivial matter. Just after Rog used Susanoo, Mephisto's attack arrived in front of him. At this time, Mephisto didn't use any fancy attack methods. Energy impact. A pure and terrifying energy impact containing the power of hell. When this terrifying impact, which was enough to completely change the terrain, arrived in front of him, Rog didn't hesitate and directly blocked it with Yata mirror. Yata mirror, which can reflect and defend against all attacks, is really that powerful? Now is the best time to test it. The terrifying blood-red energy impact crashed into the Yata no Kagami like a roaring flood. This terrifying energy impact lasted for a full 4 or 5 seconds before it ended. When the energy impact was over, Yata mirror in Susanoo's hand once again revealed its true appearance. Unscathed. Yata mirror blocked Mephisto's energy impact. Although Dum didn't know what kind of existence Yata mirror was. But after seeing Yata mirror block Mephisto's attack unscathed, he found that he had seriously underestimated Rog's strength. With Yata mirror alone, Rog could ignore most of his attacks. Not only was Dum shocked by Yata mirror's amazing defensive power, but even Mephisto in the distance also showed a dignified look. Although the energy impact just now wasn't his full-strength attack, it was still an attack he sent out in a serious state. But soon he put away the doubts in his heart and raised his right hand again. In the blink of an eye, another wave of energy that was even more powerful arrived in front of Rog. Boom. Unlike the previous attack, when the energy impact hit the Yata no Kagami, it exploded like an intercontinental missile hitting the target. The huge explosion sound and the explosion of energy instantly engulfed Rog's Susanoo. A few seconds later, when everything returned to normal, cracks appeared on Yata mirror in Susanoo's hand. Fortunately, Yata mirror itself was a spiritual weapon without a physical body, so these cracks were quickly repaired by Rog's chakra and returned to its original appearance. Can you hurry up? I can't hold on any longer. The Yata mirror that Rog had now was not the real Yata mirror. His current Yata mirror and Tatsuka sword were both temporary items given by the system, and they were existences that would disappear after they were used up. 3 times. He only had 3 chances to use Yata mirror and Tatsuka sword. Rog did not intend to waste all the chances of Yata mirror on Mephisto, so the limit he could bear was 1 time. As long as Yata mirror was broken, it would be counted as 1 time. If he wanted to continue using Yata mirror, he could only use up 1 more chance. Stop rushing me, it's almost done. Although the portal on Earth would automatically open when the time was right, Rog and Doom did not have that kind of time at all. By the time the portal opened according to the set time, the grass on their graves was already several meters tall. Standing in front of them now was not Mephisto, who was just playing around, but a completely enraged Heavenly Father. Chapter 472. Although Rog also had the strength of a demigod in front of a heavenly father, his strength was far from enough. The difference in strength between a demigod and a heavenly father was not something that could be made up for with numbers. Even if Rog had Doom's help now, it would still be useless. It would be fine if Mephisto was just playing around. But once he became serious and this was the hell he ruled, even if Rog and Doom did their best, their chances of winning would not exceed 10%. Although this winning rate seemed cruel, it was already the highest winning rate they could achieve. If they made any more mistakes, their chances of winning would not even reach 5%. After 2 consecutive attacks failed to shatter the Yada mirror, Mephisto finally decided to use his full strength. For Mephisto, this was just something that needed to be taken seriously. But for Rog and Doom, it was something that needed to be done with all their might. Just like before, Mephisto did not use any fancy attacks. Instead, he sent out an energy attack that symbolized the strength of a heavenly father. Unlike the previous 2 energy shockwaves, this energy shockwave was pure black. A deep black that symbolized death and nirvana. This black energy attack seemed to break through space and instantly appeared in front of Rog, taking the initiative to collide with the Yada mirror in Susanu's hand. There was no terrifying explosion, no uncontrollable energy turbulence, no unstoppable terrifying impact. This black energy was like an illusory bubble as it crashed into the Yada no Kagami. Then it silently shattered and dissipated. Mephisto's full-strength attack did not display any terrifying power that could destroy heaven and earth. Instead, it was like a silent joke. However, the moment this black energy dissipated, the Yada mirror in Susanu's left hand shattered with a loud bang. Bang. The Yada mirror, which was said to be able to defend against all attacks, shattered like a mirror under Mephisto's full-strength attack. At the same time, Susanu's left hand also shattered inch by inch. Susanu was just a product of Chakra's materialization. But at this moment, Mephisto's black energy impact directly connected the Susanu to the caster, Rog. Susanu's left hand disappeared, and Rog's left hand also seemed to have been hit by a terrifying attack, and bright red blood burst out. *CK. The intense pain made Rog curse out loud. Even so, he still controlled the hellfire around his body to incinerate the blood that spurted out, not letting his blood drip onto the ground. After dealing with the crisis of leaving blood in hell, he mobilized chakra and performed a temporary treatment on his left hand that suddenly exploded. He didn't need to completely heal his left hand. As long as the wounds stopped bleeding, his immortal body would automatically finish the rest of the work. Even if he did not activate chakra, the immortal body would automatically heal the injury on his left hand. However, in this way he would have to constantly pay attention to whether or not his blood would fall to the ground unknowingly. Fresh blood was a very useful medium in the field of magic. Rog did not want Mephisto to get his blood and then use it as a medium to cast several fatal curses on him. Yada no Kagami broke in the end. After blocking 3 attacks from Mephisto, Yada no Kagami ended its mission. The teleportation portal is ready. After paying the price of 1 use of Yada no Kagami, Dum finally opened the portal back to Earth. You go first. I still have some personal grudges to deal with. Rog said calmly to Dum without turning back. Personal grudges? Dum was stunned. However, he did not hesitate for long. He directly walked into the portal less than a meter away and returned to his castle. Mephisto, this is the second and last time. Next time, the one who will escape will be you. Rog said loudly to Mephisto in the distance. No, you won't have a next chance. As he spoke, Mephisto raised his right hand again and summoned a pure black energy ball that was only 1 meter in diameter. This was an energy ball that looked like a black hole. Mephisto did not care about the portal behind Rog because Rog would not have the chance to walk through it at all. Is that so? But that's not up to you. As soon as he said that, Rog controlled Susanu, and let Susanu, which only had its right hand left, hold the gourd hanging on its hand. When Susanu held the gourd like it was holding a sword, the wine in the gourd flew out and condensed into a long sword burning with golden flames. Tatsuka sword. Unlike Yada no Kagami, Tatsuka sword's 3 chances were 3 chances to attack. As long as Yada no Kagami did not break, no matter how many attacks it blocked, it would only count as 1 chance. Tatsuka sword was different. As long as it attacked the target, it would count as 1 chance. The sword is not bad, but unfortunately it's not. Before Mephisto could finish speaking, the Tatsuka sword formed by golden flames appeared in front of him and pierced his body. The speed of the Tatsuka sword's attack was beyond Mephisto's imagination. However, he still did not take the Tatsuka sword's attack to heart, even if he had been pierced by the Tatsuka sword. Do you think an attack of this level can defeat me? After feeling the power of the Tatsuka sword, Mephisto laughed disdainfully, mocking Rog for overestimating himself. I never said that I would use this move to defeat you. For some reason, after seeing Rog's calm expression, Mephisto realized that something was wrong. However, he soon realized what was wrong. The Tatsuka sword did not cause any serious injuries to his body, but began to forcibly seal his body. No, to be precise, it was not a seal but a forceful pull of his body into another world. The Tatsuka sword, also known as the Sakura Tachi, was a sealed sword without a physical body. As long as it was stabbed, it could seal the target forever, in a drunken dreamlike illusory world. And unlike ordinary illusory worlds, the Tatsuka sword's illusory world sealed not only the target's spirit and soul, but also the target's body. Orochimaru, who had used the Orochi Jutsu, was sealed in a gourd by Uchiha Itachi. Hit by the Tatsuka sword, Mephisto's body began to deform rapidly, becoming like dough that was being pulled, showing a form that did not conform to common sense at all. How could this be? Mephisto had never seen an existence like the Tatsuka sword, not even a similar existence. It could even be said that the Tatsuka sword was completely beyond Mephisto's understanding. Mephisto was indeed a lord of hell, and in his long life, he had seen all kinds of strange things. But unfortunately, the Tatsuka sword used by Rog was not a product that should appear in this world at all. Whether it was the attribute of power, the principle, or the form, it did not belong to this world. Even if Mephisto was a heavenly father, it was impossible for him to know the knowledge of other worlds. If he could do this, he would not be a heavenly father but a multiverse-level existence or even a higher-level existence. As his body continued to deform, the black hole-like energy ball that Mephisto had summoned also shattered with a bang, completely collapsing. What was even more troublesome was that his body was constantly being pulled into the gourd by the Tatsuka sword. Damn it. Although Mephisto did not have a fixed form, there was one thing that he could not avoid, and that was, his demon core was in his body. Rog had never expected the Tatsuka sword to completely seal Mephisto. No matter how magical the Tatsuka sword was, it was impossible to seal a heavenly father-level existence. His goal from the beginning was Mephisto's core. Or a part of Mephisto's core. Unlike humans, everything about a hell demon was in their core. Whether it was their power or their knowledge, they were all stored in their core. Taking away their core was no different from taking away their life. Of course, a heavenly father-level existence like Mephisto would definitely not allow others to take away his core. However, even if he could only take away a small part of his core, Rog would be satisfied. Because this meant that he had permanently taken away a part of Mephisto's power. If the Lord of Hell, Mephisto, was a high and mighty god, then the current Rog was a blasphemer who was stealing the authority of a god. When a part of his body was completely pulled into the Tatsuka sword's gourd, Mephisto finally made a decision. He took the initiative to give up a part of his body that was sealed. If he had enough time, he could completely break the Tatsuka sword seal. Unfortunately, he did not have such time now. After realizing that he could not change the outcome for the time being, Mephisto displayed the decisiveness and determination that a hell demon should have. He took the initiative to give up a part of his body and peeled off a part of his core that he could no longer break free from the seal. After splitting the important core into two, Mephisto separated a brand new body and broke free from the Tatsuka sword seal. Thank you for your hospitality. Seeing that Mephisto had taken the initiative to give up a part of his core and reformed his body in the distance, Rog raised his right hand to his left chest and bowed slightly. Then he exerted some strength in his legs and jumped into the portal. The moment he entered the portal, he removed Susanoo to avoid putting too much pressure on the portal. In the end, Rog completed his initial goal and left Hell alive with a part of Mephisto's core. When he returned to Earth, Dum did not hesitate and directly destroyed the portal he had created. Have you always been so crazy? You're tuning in to the Han Lee's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.